We're trying to gather a few more members who are just hanging out in the back. On such an important bill. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee on February 26, 2026. Today, our first bill will be by our very own Chair Corman. Welcome back to the committee, sir. House Bill 1081, Maryland Transit Administration Reform Act. And you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning or afternoon, colleagues. You might remember me presenting a bill to you last year that turned into a work group to study reform of the Maryland Transit Administration. That bill passed, and a work group met, I believe, 5 times during the interim. I served on that along with Delegate Edelson and Senator McCray, and then Senator Jackson transitioning to Senator Hedelman, along with the agency and some members of the public, and our great chair of that work group. And I thought it was actually a great work group process. I think many of us walked in with our own preformed judgments, or at least I walked in with my own preformed judgment, and we met and we compromised and came up with a report that was sent to the General Assembly, I think, in December. And this bill simply implements what is in that report. And the basic thing that it does is it sets up 2 new sort of governing boards in MTA, one to oversee the core Baltimore service, which is a huge part of MTA's portfolio, the light rail, the subway, the bus, and the paratransit in the city. And that will be majority governor appointed, but we'll have local appointments as well. The reason it continues to be majority governor appointed is because, as you all know, the MTA is funded entirely by the state, right? Our state taxpayers pay the bill. The governor is obviously elected by all of the state taxpayers, or at least those who choose to participate and vote in his column. And so it makes sense that the governor continue to have sort of overall authority there, but we do want to make sure there's more local involvement. That will largely replace the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission that has been around for a couple of years and I think has been very successful in improving oversight of the core service in Baltimore. And so we're transitioning to sort of the next phase of that. The other big governing board in the bill is for the commuter services, the commuter bus and the commuter rail service. Anybody here know what the name of the commuter rail service is in Maryland? Oh my gosh, anybody?
Check the spelling.
It's even spelled correctly, guys. And so that board will be more of an advisory board, and we're hoping that will help raise the profile, which obviously we need to do since none of you know the name of the commuter rail and commuter bus services. There's also some staffing reordering called for under the bill to create sort of clear lines of control over those different services, as well as staffing for the board. The bill does another significant item that I'm sure people have noticed, which is it tries to bring parity between our existing modes, mostly state highway, and the Maryland Transit Administration. The Maryland Transit Administration has different rules on personnel, different rules on eminent domain, which I'm sure will get some interest, different rules on procurement than state highway. And that is largely a function of history and how the different agencies were created and developed over time. But we want to sort of bring parity to them. On eminent domain in particular, because I know it's an area of concern for some people on the committee, to be clear, the Maryland Transit Administration has eminent domain power now, right? They can do eminent domain today. They're actually doing it in my county, right near my district along the Purple Line, or did it over the past few years. What this would do is make that process that they undergo to do eminent domain similar to what, almost identical to what it is for state highway. And so it's just bringing parity to the processes. It doesn't add a new eminent domain power that they don't currently have. So I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but luckily we have a great lineup of other witnesses to talk about the bill. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to turn it over to the MTA Administrator.
Thank you, Chair Corman. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Holly Arnold. I'm the administrator at the Maryland Transit Administration, and I am here to speak in support of House Bill 1081. You know, the opportunity to be here to discuss the House bill and the work group on the reorganization of MTA. Really, over the past several months, we were pleased to engage with the work group's efforts and participate in those valuable conversations on a wide range of important issues relevant to transit throughout Maryland. We appreciated the opportunity to brief the work group on MTA's roles and responsibilities across the state, how our decision-making and budgetary processes work, and our extensive and nuanced relationships with the federal, regional, contractual, and labor partners, and our overall unique organizational complexity. We welcome the opportunity to strengthen governance and improve transit system performance throughout the state, and we support the work group's effort to advance a stronger local voice for the Baltimore region and the improvement of our train service and our commuter bus service. In addition to transit governance, we appreciate the work group's attention to issues related to MTA's liability, workforce, and procurement reform, as the chair mentioned. We are grateful that House Bill 1081 implements a fair and reasonable liability cap that aligns MTA with other state agencies and includes that needed procurement reform for capital projects on our fixed guideway systems. We look forward to working with the bill sponsor on timely and effective implementation, and we're committed to the successful establishment of these boards. And we look forward to continued conversations around improving transit governance and ensuring Maryland is in the best possible position to deliver reliable, equitable, and forward-looking transit service throughout the state. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Corman, good to see you again. Vice Chair Guyton, good to see you as well, and members of the committee. My name is Samir Sid. I currently serve as the Director of Maryland Government Affairs for Johns Hopkins University Medicine. However, I'm joining you today in my role as Chair on the work group of the reorganization of the Maryland Transit Administration. My views don't necessarily reflect the views of the institution or the health system, but I'm excited to be here in my personal capacity as chair of the work group. Our work group was established through legislation last year to study the potential reorg of MDOT and the Maryland Transit Administration. We were tasked with considering alternative reorganization plans, weighing costs and benefits, workforce obligations of the MTA, and ensuring that Baltimore City maintained appropriate oversight and input into the core Baltimore transit services provided by MTA. The work group met from 5 times between September and December of 2025. We were provided multiple briefings by a variety of different groups and had other subject matters experts inform our work. After robust discussion, we arrived at 2 problem statements. First, the Baltimore Regional Transit is lagging behind Washington, D.C. from a growth perspective, and that there's been no meaningful expansion of our transit system in Baltimore for over 30 years. Informing this was a side-by-side of the 1967 plans in Baltimore and D.C. and the current state of the system. Obviously, the D.C. system has progressed far more than the Baltimore system. Though expansion of Baltimore Regional Transit is primarily a financial issue, there are governance issues at play. And those governance issues were seen in 2015 when the Red Line project was unilaterally canceled with no check or balance. Our second problem statement is the improvement of our commuter rail service, which has seen reduced ratings from national publications in recent years, and must be updated to reflect working patterns after the COVID-19 pandemic. I will speed through this. At a high level, our work group endorsed the creation of 2 boards of directors, one overseeing Baltimore Core Services and another overseeing MTA commuter services.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
She's very tough.
All right, thank you.
I think I got to lean it a little bit. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to come and speak to you today. I'm Michael McMillan, President and Business Agent for ATU 1300 in Baltimore, representing the transit operators and maintenance employees of the MTA. We noticed that since the cancellation of the Red Line, which really brought all this about, is with stakeholders and transit rider advocacy groups, we see that, there was a problem with not having enough say in the choices that was being made for their important everyday travel, transportation needs. So with that, the Baltimore Regional, there was a thought to bring about the Baltimore Regional Transit Authority like WMATA has. But, we as the ATU union, we thought that, believed that would have unintended financial and logistical consequences. So we fast forward to 2023 to where there was, through legislation, the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission was created, which gave the Baltimore City public and also us as the union, labor union, representing the workforce, of frontline employees a chance to have an opportunity to have a voice and a say of what was going on and have some type of direct input. This was good, but yet it still didn't give that complete authority or oversight over what needed to be done. For example, if there was another unfriendly transit governor to get into place, then hey, could he do the same thing with the reintroduction of the Red Line now, council it all together again? So, and this brings about to how we get up to the HB 517 in 2020 2025, and this was something where that led to us to have a happy medium. And this gave us the introduction of the new Core Service Board and Commuter Service Advisory Board that will go a long way towards addressing the transit rider concerns. Like the BRCTC, we're happy to see the inclusion of our labor seat and also the Baltimore Core Service Board. We believe that the long-term funding questions for the MTA have not been resolved, but the working group did a thorough job in adjusting the charge. But we encourage you to favorably support HB 1081. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, if I could just add, I apologize. First of all, I skipped over the liability caps. It's just because I was doing it from memory. I wasn't trying to sneak anything by. Just to be clear, it's again a function of MTA's sort of strange history as a formerly private entity and, subsumed by the state, but all it would do is make it work like the rest of state government. On the eminent domain, I should have mentioned that's the reason for the constitutional amendment in the bill. I'm not sneaking in a constitutional right to mass transit. Maybe that'll be a bill for next year. This is just a kind of technical way where we have to deal with eminent domain. And finally, I should also add, the bill has a study, a technical study that will be done in coordination with our metropolitan planning organizations related to setting up an independent rail authority in Maryland, which is something a number of other states, including the state we're always being compared to, Virginia, already has. Thanks for letting me add on there, Madam Chair.
Certainly, anytime you want to add. All right. Delegate Boyce, do you have a question for this panel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Mr. Chair, did you see Kennedy Krieger's letter? And are you amenable?
I saw it on the way in here. Obviously it's up to the subcommittee and the committee, but I'm always open to positive amendments.
Thank you.
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, and to your great panel. Always good to hear innovative ideas for improving transit in our state. I do have a question about the bill. Specifically, Mr. Chair, if you would explain, confirm. So on page 5, at the top, line 1, page 5, the bill reads that the board shall advise the administrator on and consent to the appointment of the deputy administrator by the administrator and consult with the administrator on any removal. Further, that the board will review and approve the administrator's budget. And what I'm really interested in, actually, I think I got on the wrong line. There's specific provision that refers to the board's authority to advise on and consent to the appointment of the deputy administrator. And that's what I really want to get at. I just want to make sure that the board has its say and gives consent to the appointment of the deputy administrator. That's a shall, not a may, correct?
Sure. Thank you, Delegate. First, I want to shout out your seatmate, Delegate Edelson, who served in the work group and is co-sponsoring the bill. And obviously, there's no greater champion of these issues in the legislature than you, Delegate Lewis. Yes, this language is designed to basically give the board a vote over the appointment of the deputy administrator. Advise and consent, as we know from our constant con law lectures on the House floor, is a term of art, and advise and consent, just like in the U.S. Senate context, means I think the administrator will send them a name. They're not going to be out there interviewing themselves, but then they will vote on appointing that individual.
Okay, thank you for confirming that, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you, Delegate Lewis. I don't see other questions for this panel at this time, so I know that you have some other favorables on your list. If you'd like to bring them up, I don't believe that what I have in front of me actually matches real life, but I have on this next panel Mike Kelly, John Laria, and Wes Mitchell. And then to come Smart TD, Action Committee for Transit, and Coalition for Smarter Growth. So however, there you go, David Pendleton. However you all can fit up there and play musical chairs will be fine.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Mike Kelly testifying in favor of this bill. I serve as the Executive Director of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, the Regional Council of Governments for Central Maryland, and I should say hello to Delegate Stein, who sits on our board representing the House of Delegates. BMC has been working on transit governance issues for the better part of a decade, and we are very much in favor of this legislation, and I want to focus on what it does for local governments. Transit really needs three things to be successful. It needs coordination, stability, and support. And what this bill does for the first time is give our local governments an official voice at the table. It'll give Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County, the three jurisdictions served by Baltimore's core transit service, a public and a transparent say in the development of the system, which is important for economic development, for land use, and all the things that have to work with transit. Additionally, it'll provide stability. The board will have the authority to weigh in on the approval and cancellation of major development projects like the Red Line, so that in the future, a project that has taken so long and so much money to develop can't be canceled by a unilateral choice. It'll have a board of directors that's accountable for the furtherance and possibly the cancellation of a project like that. And finally, support. The Baltimore region is the only major region in the country without a governing board. And governing boards provide governance, they provide transparency, they provide decision-making, but they can also be powerful advocates. And having a public, powerful advocate for a transit agency is critical for its growth. We haven't seen a major capital development in decades, and one of the reasons for that is that we haven't had a cohesive and consistent set of champions, and this bill is certainly something that changes that. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Madam Chair. My name is Wesley Mitchell, and I also served on a HB 517 work group, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm actually a licensed professional engineer as well as a transportation planner, and I actually grew up in the Baltimore area and has pretty much spent my whole life riding the rail or the bus line or MTA MARC service for several years. And because of that, I understand the importance that public transportation has on vulnerable populations, providing access to jobs and core services and education. And that's why I applaud the work that myself and my fellow colleagues have been able to do in this work group, because it does give a voice to sort of the transportation needs of a larger community. We're able to identify what are some of the core issues within Baltimore City, but then also providing access to MARC and commuter bus service to make sure that we're providing the economic viability needed to bring clear prosperity to the citizens of Maryland. I think what, as Mr. Kelly mentioned, the ability to make sure that we put protections in place so that when things happen that we want to move forward as far as access to clear opportunities, we are not able to, we're able to kind of move those things forward without impact from outside influences, and to give a voice sometimes to the voiceless. So I just want to thank you, and I applaud sort of the efforts of the work group, and I do support this bill moving forward. Thank you.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of my favorite committee, House ENT. Hello, my name is David Pendleton. I'm the Director for the Maryland Safety and Legislative Board for the Transportation Division of SMART. I'm here today urging a favorable report on HB 1081, the MTA Reform Act. 1081 will create the Board of Directors for the Baltimore Core Transit Services and the Commuter Services Advisory Board for MARC Commuter Rail and our commuter bus service. Furthermore, this law proposes a constitutional amendment allowing the administration certain condemnation authority and requiring MDOT to complete a technical study on the creation of a rail authority in the state. Reforming the MTA in this manner, allowing MARC to operate more independently of the MTA, will allow it to be more efficient, growth-oriented, and attentive to the needs of the riding public. Our neighbor rail commuter agency, the VRE, has had similar authority for decades, while also having similar operations to MARC. According to its CEO's report, in 2024, VRE's operating expenses were $1.8 million under budget. And this was due to its leadership being able to make decisions without unnecessary bureaucracy. Despite ridership being only 33% of pre-pandemic levels, these efficiencies were achieved without having to lay off employees or make cuts to its service. In fact, the VRE has managed to expand during this time, starting constructions on many capital improvements at several of its stations and facilities. To date, totaling $125 million worth of capital improvements, many more in the development and in the final planning stages, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars more, creating thousands of good-paying union jobs. MARC operates 3 times as many trains as the VRE, runs 7 days a week, and transports double the amount of passengers. Imagine what MARC can do if it were free to operate in the same manner. Once this model proves to be successful, imagine the positive reforms that could be made. A better service, more attentive to its customers' needs, while creating and maintaining thousands of good union jobs. It's a win-win formula of success, and I do urge a favorable report.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman and Vice Chair Guyton and committee members. My name is Bill Pugh. I'm the Transportation and Climate Director for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. Our organization advocates for walkable, inclusive, and transit-oriented communities as the most sustainable and equitable way for the Washington, D.C. region to grow and provide opportunities for all. We work extensively in the Maryland suburbs. My testimony focuses on 2 bill provisions, the Commuter Services Advisory Board and also the study on the creation of a rail authority. MARC and MTA commuter bus services are vital transportation options in wide areas of Maryland, and they deserve their own advisory board. Given crowded corridors like the BW Parkway and I-270, enhanced MARC service and infrastructure have the potential to cost-effectively provide more reliable, sustainable, and affordable travel options. In addition, MARC stations have the significant potential to support more homes and businesses. The proposed advisory board, as we just heard, has seen benefits in its partner or a similar commuter rail service in Virginia. Our organization also works in Northern Virginia, and we've seen the benefits of the Virginia Railway Express having a dedicated focus board of regional officials and stakeholders. As we just heard, VRE Commuter Railroad has been able to implement a full program of station maintenance and track improvements. HB 1081 also would study a statewide rail authority, which has been successful as a model in other states. In neighboring Virginia, the Passenger Rail Authority, created by the General Assembly in 2020, has brought focus to managing, funding, and growing statewide rail services. Overall, we think this is a good model, worth study, and we ask for a favorable report by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you all. Not seeing any questions for this panel. There are 2 other virtual. Oh, I'm sorry, I could not see you over there. Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to this great panel. I have a quick question for you. I think, Mr. Kelly, this might be best directed at you. Thanks for all your work. Good to see you. I'm wondering, actually I have 2 questions. My first question is, will this bill prevent any future executive from canceling a major transit infrastructure project in the future? Would this have prevented the previous governor from doing what he did?
So the structure would not prohibit the cancellation of a project. It would require a vote of the board. So it would, instead of being a unilateral executive decision from the state, it would allow the local governments to have a say in that decision to cancel.
So a check and a balance, which has been absent. We had a strong governor system.
And it's still a strong governor board, but it gives the locals a voice and it creates a public record for that decision being made. There would have to be a meeting, there would have to be a vote. One would assume there would be some debate and discussion as opposed to a simple announcement, which is what the current system allows for.
Thank you. Side question, just occurred to me, is I don't remember seeing public notice or public feedback in the board deliberations. Did I miss that? I suppose I could ask the sponsor, but I won't do that. Maybe we'll talk about that in subcommittee. Okay, my other question for you. I noticed that among the categories of individuals to be appointed, there's certain qualifications or qualities, characteristics. And I don't recall seeing a representative from the community of young people that depend on transit. In your view, could there be any value in including a youth voice? For example, I think MTA has a youth coordinating council. Could that be advantageous?
So I'm not sure we discussed the makeup of the commission publicly in a commission meeting. I know through side conversations, we talked about all sorts of potential roles. I believe it's a 9-person commission. And I think it's going to have to be a question of which groups are highlighted for membership. My personal opinion is that there could be a suggested menu of the types of groups to be represented and leave it up to the discretion of the executives about who they appoint. But it's not there in the bill right now.
Right. I thought of it specifically because school boards around the state sometimes, in some places, have student members. They may be non-voting, but they have a seat at the table. So just curious about that. All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Delegate Lewis, and wave your arms in the air if I'm not seeing your red light, but I don't see another one right now. And so we do have 2 more virtual witnesses on the sponsors panel. If you are with us, it is, we're looking for John Laria, Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. And then after him, we will have Shanika Whitehurst, if she's here, Action Committee for Transit.
Thank
And you
you.
may
I'm
begin
here.
whenever.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Chair Sponsor Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is John Laria, and I serve as chair of the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission, the BRTC. And in that capacity, I was also a member of the work group that was created. As you know, the pending bill would replace our commission with a new MTA Court Transit Service Board, but I hope you will not be surprised to hear that I'm in full support. Let me explain. The BRTC grew out of a Baltimore Metropolitan Council study which finally acknowledged a few years ago that the current MDOT MTA structure was not working well for MTA, or at least not for MTA stakeholders in the Baltimore region. The creation of the BRTC in 2023 was a step in the direction of improvement and reform by creating what is essentially an advocacy body for and an advisory body to MTA. I hope and I believe we've been good advocates in giving good advice. But our experience these last few years has taught us that it is not enough. While we have local representation appointed by the mayor and county executives, along with other important stakeholders, we are constrained by what is fundamentally and sometimes frustratingly an advisory role. It's not that MDOT and MTA haven't been good partners, they absolutely have, but our ability ultimately to exert any control is limited, especially with budget priorities. In fact, the work group identified this as its first problem statement. Under the current BRTC, unlike the current BRTC, the new Core Transit Service Board would be required to approve, not just review MTA's operating and capital budget requests, as well as major service plans, policies, and initiatives. And you've heard about the supermajority requirement because we learned the hard way through the preemptive cancellation of the red line by a previous governor with literally no input from those affected. You've also heard from the sponsor and others about the badly needed structural improvements, including improvements in personnel policies, tort liability, quick take authority, and procurement. In sum, HB 1081 delivers the accountability, the transparency, and the regional responsiveness that Baltimore's transit system and its riders deserve, while at the same time making it easier for MTA to fulfill its critical mission. Thank you for allowing me to testify virtually today, and we urge a favorable report.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Whitehurst, are you with us?
Good afternoon.
Are you? There you are. Thank you. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to the Chairman Delegate Corman, also Vice Chair Delegate Guyton for allowing me to speak today. My name is Shanika Whitehurst. I represent the Action Committee for Transit, and I am the president of ACT. ACT applauds this bill coming up to be voted on. One, for it shows stronger accountability and should ensure better service for riders. From an equity and access perspective, it should help ensure that historically underserved communities are not left behind in this process, which sometimes happens unexpectedly, though we try to avoid it. And then also, we applaud that there should be some economic environmental benefits that should be associated with it, as is associated with a number of public transit projects. In particular, we support the provision giving MTA quick take authority, which we feel that is essential for future light rail lines such as the Baltimore Red Line that's been mentioned a couple of times, the Southern Maryland light rail, and as well as possibly a third track on the Mark Brunswick line, where Mark has been mentioned several times as well. Just in point of comparison, the State Highway Administration has had this authority for highway projects. The lack of it for NTA, in particular, building the Purple Line, has caused delays in assembling, where if we had that, you would be able to make decisions about right away a lot easier, which would knock out unnecessary expenditures. But ACT thanks you again, and we fully support this bill.
Thank you very much. Now we have two in-person favorables as well. If you'd like to come up to the table, we have Jennifer Vey from Greater Baltimore Committee, if you're with us still. And we also have, let's see, Veronica Macbeth, Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Is Ms. Macbeth? Yes. First.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Vey, and I'm here on behalf of the Greater Baltimore Committee, which is the leading voice for the private sector in the Baltimore region. GBC is in strong support of the Maryland Transit Administration Reform Act for the simple reason that its passage is vital to advancing the Baltimore regional economy. The Baltimore region has gone more than 30 years without a major transit expansion. During that time, as we well know, we've seen the cancellation of the Red Line, continued underinvestment in core bus and rail service, and critically, a governance structure that leaves Baltimore leaders, transit riders, and other stakeholders without a meaningful voice in influencing major decisions regarding projects, policies, and transportation funding. Transit is not just a transportation issue. It is essential infrastructure that supports economic growth, access, and opportunity. Baltimore's companies, workers, and investors, those here now, and importantly, those that we want to attract, need to know that the state is committed to enhancing and maintaining a strong and reliable regional system. Today, however, as we know, the MTA operates within a structure where Baltimore system has no dedicated board and no formal mechanism for consistent local oversight. In fact, as others have pointed out, it is among the largest transit systems in the country that does not have its own board of directors. When businesses consider where to invest, to expand or relocate, they look to governance stability and long-term infrastructure planning. The reforms enabled by this bill, particularly the creation of the Core Services Board, send a clear signal that future decisions regarding transit will be made with consideration for Baltimore's needs and best interests in mind, decisions that will ultimately benefit the entire state of Maryland. We recognize that sustainable funding must also be addressed, but governance reform is a necessary first step in that direction. On behalf of the Greater Baltimore Committee and the region's business community, we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1081. I'm Veronica Macbeth, and I'm the Director of Transportation for Baltimore City. House Bill 1081 strengthens governance and accountability for Maryland Transit Administration by creating a board of directors for Baltimore Core Transit Services and Commuter Service Advisory Board. And for Baltimore City, where 1 in 3 residents lack access to a personal vehicle, and for core transit services, tens of millions of trips annually, and these reforms are essential. The Baltimore Core Transit Board would provide regional oversight of operating decisions, capital investments, and major service changes while safeguarding federal grants once projects enter engineering. And this protection is especially important in light of the prior cancellation of Baltimore Red Line and nearly $900 million lost in federal investments. HB 1081 enhances transparency and accountability through required performance reviews, capital needs assessments, and public reporting. And these measures strengthen coordination between state transit investments and local infrastructure, helping Baltimore City better align roadway design, safety improvements, and corridor planning with transit commitments. And the bill also streamlines project delivery through clarified authority and procurement flexibility for fixed guideway systems. And greater predictability and timelines strengthens BCDOT's capital planning and our long-term coordination. So HB 1081 represents an important step towards stable, accountable transit governance, and I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Baltimore City Delegate Lewis is in the house, so she has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for your testimony. Good to see you, Director Macbeth. I'm always good to see GBC as well. The business community's input is so important. Can you give me a sense from the GBC's perspective, what are the specific benefits that improvements in transit, which this bill would lead to? What are some of the reasons why the business community cares about better transit?
Sure, and thank you for that question, Delegate. The business community cares because when it comes to economic growth, economic competitiveness, we need to have better access and mobility. So clearly, from an employer standpoint, they need their workers to be able to get to work. They need, for example, if you're a hospital system, your patients be able to access the care that you're providing. If you're a local business, you want people to be able to access the goods and services that you provide. Clearly, for workers, it's a major accessibility issue. We know under our current system, just given a lot of the fractures in the system, reliability issues, et cetera, workers have difficulty getting to jobs on time. That can often keep people out of work or underemployed. And then I think when it comes to even things like talent attraction, talent wants to live in a place that has high quality transit, high quality of life. And so when looking at where they want to locate, and that goes for businesses too, they are looking for a robust transit system that they have access for. And I think as we want to recognize our own economic growth ambitions for the region, for the state of Maryland, we simply can't do it on the backs of our current infrastructure and transportation system. And I think having a governance structure that will, again, make those kind of have that decision-making power in part will help ensure that predictability, transparency, accountability, so that we can make sure that projects proceed in the best interests of the region.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Lewis. Seeing no more questions, that ends the hearing for House Bill 181, and we're going to move on now. Thank you for your participation, everyone. To House Bill 806, Delegate Hornberger, and just for the folks who are waiting right after him, then we'll go to Delegate Griffin. Welcome to my old friend, Delegate Hornberger.
Hey, how are we doing today?
How are you? Thanks for visiting. You may begin whenever you're ready.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. For the record, Delegate Kevin Hornberger here with HB 806, Vehicle Laws, Vehicle Emissions Inspection Program Modification. This is a very substantive bill, so I want to kind of open here with a question, and then I'll kind of go into the details of the bill and why it's necessary. So the question that I want to start with is, what is the purpose, and I'm asking, close the door there. A lot of excitement about this bill. What is the purpose of emissions testing? The purpose of emissions testing is so that we have vehicles that are on the road that are in compliance with emission standards and that they are not polluting the environment. That's what started emissions testing. This is both a federal requirement and a state requirement. The goal of the emissions is to reduce the emissions emitted by internal combustion engines that run on gasoline. Okay. The reason I open with that is because currently the process for emissions testing, and you all know this because you own vehicles, looks something like this. Or most of you. Yep. You purchase a vehicle if it's used. You get a mechanical inspection by a private entity that is licensed and overseen by the state of Maryland. If you pass that mechanical inspection, you are able to take that to the MVA and get tags and registration for that vehicle. Subsequent months after you have the vehicle on the road, you receive a notice in the mail that says that your vehicle is going to be tested for emissions, okay? And that you have to have it tested within so many days. Now, if you completely avoid that and you do not take the vehicle to get tested by emissions, the MVA has the power to revoke your registration. They can actually pull that back, even if you paid for the 2 years. If you go and fail, or if you are late, you can pay a fee. And you can actually fail indefinitely, forever, for the life of the vehicle, as long as you continue to show up and fail and continue to pay the $30 fee. Additionally, if your failure is such that you try to go and get it fixed and you expend a certain number of dollars, you can bring receipts to the testing station and you can get a waiver if you hit a certain threshold. Now, that entire process that I just described does nothing to reduce the emissions of your vehicle, right? It is strictly a compliance measure, pass or fail. If you fail, you can continue to pay money and continue to pollute the environment, all right? What this bill seeks to do is a radical departure of the way that we test for emissions in Maryland. This bill does a number of things. One, it seeks to move that emissions inspection to the beginning of that process. It seeks to authorize the same shops, be they independent, but be they certified by the state, to do the emissions testing at the beginning of the process, before you tag the vehicle, okay? Now, why are we doing that? Because currently, if I go to that vehicle emissions testing site that's operated by the state, guess what? There's no repair facilities there, right? All they do is the testing. And that made sense 20, 30 years ago when they were put into place, because back then, in order to test for emissions, you needed very sophisticated and expensive equipment. You needed shops, you needed technicians. This was a novel process. Now, independent owners possess the equipment, have the ability to run tailpipe tests, to run ECM codes, to run advanced diagnostics, and determine if your vehicle is operating in the manner that it should. They also have the ability to make those repairs immediately, just like they do with the mechanical inspection. So envision a process now where I make one stop. I go to that private shop, they run the mechanical, they run the emissions, they offer to repair both, and before that vehicle even goes on the road or the customer even goes to the MVA, we have a compliant vehicle, not only from a safety standpoint, but from an emission standpoint, okay? Why is it important from a cost? So all of that I just described is outside of the cost process. I will note that in the fiscal note, there are significant financial ramifications of this schism that I just outlaid. But here's where I believe that this will be net neutral, and it speaks to this on the last page of the fiscal note. The MVA, because we worked with them on this bill, informed us that they just renewed 5-year contracts. That's why you might see that some of the implementation dates are pushed very far out, like 2035. So we understand those contracts, we respect them. There's penalties for withdrawing early. So if we start this process now and start to ramp up and move towards the private sector being able to offer this, once those contracts are expired, we can liquidate the property where these testing sites are located, which will have a net, positive income. And the contracts for the staff and the overhead and the utilities and all those costs of a brick and mortar will go away, okay? Lastly, the libertarian in me likes this because why should a state provide a service that could be provided in the private sector at a better, from a value standpoint, and also generate money in our economy? So with that, I know this is a very complicated bill. There's a lot of moving parts here, but I feel that this is the right thing to do. And I feel that this will translate to cleaner air in our state, and that's why I brought the bill forward. So thank you for the indulgence, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, you bringing all of this to our attention, it's a lot of food for thought. Delegate Foley has a question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate. Good to see you. My question is, so is the goal of this bill to put the state emissions testing facilities out of business? Is that
Yes.
really, that's eventually the goal of this?
Over the course of many years.
Of many years, yes,
Yep.
I understand. So I know there's a provision in the bill that talks about setting fees, but I am a little concerned that if the state gets out of that business,
Yep.
that the fees will then skyrocket. And so, going to like just private contractors doing this.
Yep.
Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I can. That model is already playing out in the mechanical inspection side.
Okay.
Whereas a shop is inclined to be a certified inspection station, and right now I believe that's at $95 for your mechanical inspection if you have a new vehicle. And the reason they are incentivized to do that is because they are more likely to be able to perform the maintenance that's required to become compliant and therefore garner new customers.
So there's an incentive, you're saying there's an incentive to keep the
Keep the
charge
fee
low?
low.
Okay, fair enough.
And then it also gives the state to say what that rate is. So in other
Yes.
words, it doesn't just give latitude to the private
Right, it's in the
providers.
bill that, yeah,
Yep.
that's right. And Madam Chair, if I could, another question. My other question is, and to be honest with you, I don't know how the state decides where to put the emissions testing facilities. But I'm wondering if we go to totally private, if we send that out just to private industry, will we end up with quote-unquote emission testing deserts, for lack of a better term? I'm assuming, I might be wrong about this, but I'm assuming that the state tries to position them in places so that they're accessible to people around the state.
They attempt wherever possible to based on population distribution. For example, in Cecil County, there's one testing location, okay? I would pose the argument that by bundling these together with the mechanical inspection, you could at least expect 80%, if not more, of existing mechanical inspection stations to adopt this.
Okay, under the mechanical inspection program, you're talking about those stations.
And that would drastically increase the number of providers.
And are those located, is it, I don't expect you to know where they all are, but are those located,
Yeah, they're, any shop that is an independent operator, I'm not talking about necessarily like a dealership, but any private shop, this is a marketing tool. This is something that is central to their business.
Okay.
Because this is how they get the vast majority of their customers.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Right, thank you, Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I take my vehicle to emissions, it fails, I have the right to put X number of dollars into improving the emissions on that vehicle. What is that amount?
Last time I checked, I believe it was $500. Don't quote me on that, but it is a dollar threshold. And all of that, and I've had vehicles in the past that where this has been an issue. You just have to take that receipt from the shop back to emissions and then get that waiver. And also, something that we haven't taken into account here is just the convenience of the customer. You're ping-ponging back and forth between repair shop and vehicle emissions and mechanical inspection and MVA. It's just not, it's not a flowing process. And by doing it after the fact of the vehicle already being on the road, now you've trapped the driver in a situation where they're weighing, do I get rid of this vehicle and eat all those costs that I incurred? Do I try to get this dollar amount waiver that you've just alluded to? And all the while, this vehicle is polluting the earth, right? And that could go on indefinitely.
Yep. And I understand all of that, and I guess where I'm going with this, I think the amount's $450 still.
There you
have
go.
to put into your vehicle. So now I'm going, I get a vehicle, I need a vehicle. I can only afford an inexpensive vehicle.
Yep.
My money's tight, trying to get to work. So I guess the way I'm looking at this, and I love your thought of getting it out of the hands of government.
Sure.
But I guess the way I'm looking at this, if we could figure out a way to where they would only incur the $95 inspection, and if that would include the $30 emissions testing.
Could.
I could probably get behind it, but right now I'm just thinking of the total possible dollar amount for someone that doesn't have the means to get a.
Yeah, what I would say is
So
that.
you're looking at 450 plus 95 plus another $30 for
Adds
the
up.
test. That's a substantial amount of money for me to be able to get a tag fast.
Yeah, what I would say is that there's a reason that there's a very long runway in this bill, okay? Because this is a radical departure from the status quo, okay? I feel that this is where it should have headed years ago. A pilot, an ability or an enabling to let some of these higher performing shops start to administer this, I believe would serve as a beta test for what I've laid out here in the bill, and with that long runway, that's possible.
And one other question?
Certainly, I do have to make a point of personal privilege. Every time you say vehicle, I smile because it sounds just like my dad's.
Well,
Go right ahead, ask
That's
another
all we
question
know.
about vehicles.
That's all we know up my way, vehicle.
Yep.
Now she made me forget. Okay, because I've had a lot of nightmare, and I can see where this bill would help with that.
Yep.
I've had a lot of nightmare issues going to emissions in my area, which, in my humble opinion, we shouldn't even have the emissions out there in Western Maryland. But I've gone there, and I've been told your vehicle has passed emissions, but it has failed because
Right.
my oil light's on. It needs a
Sure.
quart of oil. So how do you think, by going to the private sector, that could avoid a lot of
Yeah,
issues?
I'll answer that two ways, and I have an anecdote as well. There was a time where I went to the emissions testing, come to find out I didn't have a gas cap, and I failed because of that. And the gentleman there was nice enough to allow me to go to the parts store, get a gas cap, come back the same day. It's not always the case. If it is a more substantive repair, it can be done on site, you get compliant, you're back on the road.
I like that.
Here's one more thing I want to add from a consumer protection standpoint. What most folks are doing, if they're savvy, is before they purchase the vehicle, show me the inspection, right? Show me the mechanical inspection that you've gotten, because they're good for 60 days, before I purchase this vehicle, because I don't want to go and buy this vehicle, and the next thing I know, it's a lemon. We're going to have all these repairs. You could do that same consumer protection now that they're bundled together before you even purchase the vehicle. So now the person, again, isn't trapped with a $450 bill before they can even be compliant. So I think, I hope that answers your question, but it allows for the repair to happen on site right there.
Thank you so much. Thanks for those questions, too. Really good ones. I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Lewis to ask about vehicles.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Hornberger. It's always good to see you because you're so thoughtful. I heard you address climate change, carbon emission reductions, consumer protection, small business opportunity. I mean, maybe this is the only bill we need to pass this entire session. But in all seriousness, very thoughtful. I wonder, is there, I see the argument you're making about the value of bundling mechanical repair services and emissions testing in one place. Is there anything right now that prevents a private mechanical auto repair shop from also qualifying and being designated as an emissions testing shop?
Yeah, so the state has a de facto monopoly on the testing.
Okay.
And the passing of the testing.
Okay.
Yep.
So right now, it would be impossible for a private shop.
It would be.
Repair shop to be, okay.
And unfortunately, the nature of some vehicles, vehicles are a mechanical device. I'm a mechanical engineer. They fail. So you have scenarios where I'm going and getting it, what I believe to be fixed mechanic signs off on it, I go to the emissions testing, a light pops on or something goes awry, and now I failed again. And now I'm creating this back and forth, and I don't have the schedule or the time to take off to do this, so it can really hurt the consumer.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtfulness, and thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you, Delegate Hornberger. 2 questions.
Yep.
How much does it cost a private shop to put one of the vehicle emission testing systems in?
Yeah, so there have been significant advances in the technology that is utilized to do emissions testing. Those go from a prom reader that now, I'll show you, are the size of this cell phone. So I can do something that took place in an entire building, 20 years ago, can now have a device that plugs into your port of your car and then reads out on your cell phone of everything that's wrong, what to fix, what to replace. Tailpipe testing, same thing. Oxygen sensors, devices could be placed at that tailpipe, so not only are you running a diagnostic on the motor, but you're also confirming that at the tailpipe emission. So my understanding, and I can't speak for Veep, but I have been informed, and I'll confirm this for the committee, that Veep is no longer doing the tailpipe testing. And the reason that's problematic is because for the window of who's required to test, not all of those vehicles have the testing prom. I think that was mandated in the mid-'80s. So you've got these window of vehicles that you really can't fully test, and they're just sort of like waving them on.
Okay, the second part of the question is, unfortunately, in the fiscal, it's a huge hit to the TTF.
I did see that.
And when you live in the rural areas like you and me, we desperately depend on road repair money from the Transportation Trust Fund to get us, halfway down the road, no pun intended. Do you have any idea how we could possibly work in such a manner that the Transportation Trust Fund doesn't take such a huge hit along the way? And I like your idea, but I hate the hit to the Transportation Trust Fund because the rules, I shouldn't just say that, everybody gets killed on the Transportation Trust Fund.
No, it is significant, and I will propose some ideas, for your perusal. If we continue to go down this road, pun intended, this is just moving towards a pure inconvenience and fee to the customer. This process that I just laid out for you that's happening now does not address vehicle emissions for non-compliant vehicles. It just sets up a fee structure in lieu of compliance, all right? If you want to take that $50 million, $40 million, whatever that hit is, and just transfer it to registration of the vehicle, the consumer will save so much more money by not having to go back and forth and all of this process that you can preserve those dollars that are going into the fund, put them on the front end. The bill doesn't speak to that. That's maybe something for the committee to chew on. But this system isn't working. It's not keeping our air clean, and it's lost its way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Delegate Odom?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hornberger, what you've described to me is convincing that the state, as the process is now, if I'm correct, there's no solution to the emission issue in a number of cases in vehicles that fail.
Correct.
Okay. So now, the only thing I haven't heard, and it probably would take a lot of discussion to figure that out, would be how would we now, if we were to consider the process that you're recommending, privatizing? Because currently now, to repair the vehicle, you have to go to a private repair.
That's correct.
And as you described, when you do that, if you incur, whether it's $450 or $500 in expense, it just stays dormant.
Stays non-compliant.
Non-compliant. So is it in your proposal at all how to resolve that particular point of the non-compliance? Or perhaps maybe if they're non-compliant and it's not creating well, let me ask you that question.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, and I believe that I have an answer for it. by allowing this process to play out on the front end, the consumer has the power now to say, I'm not going to purchase that vehicle, right? So let's get back to the root cause. The root cause is the non-compliant vehicle. If the consumer has the ability to identify, and I'm sure that these shops are going to offer a quote on what they think it'll take to fix it, the consumer has the ability on the front end to say, hey, the cost of compliance for this particular vehicle is $1,000 over the purchase price, $2,000 over the purchase price. I'm not going to purchase that vehicle. I'm going to purchase another one. And that, to me, eliminates the scenario that you just posed, and that's currently playing out where folks get trapped with a lemon.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Delegate Anderson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill. On the consumer protection side, just so I'm clear, are we going to make the passage of the emissions test part of the inspection for you to get your title?
I have not specified that in the bill, but I think that's where this needs to go.
Because in the poorer sections of Maryland, we run into this problem a lot with third-party sales.
Yep.
And uninformed consumers. Yep. And I've heard of people having to spend $5,000.
Correct.
To get their vehicle exhaust back in compliance. And
Yep.
this would really help the uninformed consumer and those third-party sales, that they know up front what the total expense of the vehicle would be to them.
What they're getting into. Completely agree.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. You obviously woke up this committee a lot of interest in it. I know that for me personally, my nearest inspections facility is almost an hour away.
Yep.
And I have failed before for various reasons and had to, you know how much free time we have. So this makes a lot of sense in some ways. So we were throwing around ideas up here because we've heard concerns about the Transportation Trust Fund, which this committee is always very protective of.
Yep.
Have you had any conversations with the repair shops that might want to participate in this to get an appetite for them paying some sort of fee to be able to be a part of a new program?
I'm a big car guy. That's kind of why I'm passionate about these issues. And I've worked at shops in the last 5 years on the side. And they're already doing this work, right? They're already making the repairs. They know the folks at the emissions testing. They help that consumer, that car buyer get compliant. In terms of what it costs now to become a mechanical inspection station, there is a fee. That is not spoken to in the bill, but it gives the ability for the MVA to set that fee. So that would be another potential cost offset. Because now instead of one testing center in each county, or maybe 2 or 3, I now have providers that are 5X, 10X of what the provider is for Veep. So that could be another revenue stream to offset the loss of revenue.
Yeah, thank you. Still not sure that I got a clear answer to that about whether you've had any conversations about the dealers, with the dealers about any amount at all that they'd be willing to.
Yeah, I think they would have an appetite if it was commensurate with the vehicle emissions, with the vehicle mechanical fee.
Okay, because what you did say is that this is sort of a convenience fee for customers, and that perhaps we could get it out of increased registration fees, which, as I'm sure you are aware, that's not something that the constituents have any appetite for. But it is an interesting idea. So I think, thinking creatively about how we might do that is worth some time. Thank you so much. Proceed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That concludes Bill hearing on House Bill 806. We'll turn to House Bill 844, Delegate Griffith, Motor Vehicle Registration, Fee Exemption, Unemployable Disabled Veterans. Thanks for your patience.
Hello, committee. Well, I'm glad to be back because this is my only bill here this year. Unfortunately, I guess I'm no longer an honorary member of the committee. So, All right, thank you, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton. Congratulations, by the way, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith. I'm requesting a favorable report on HB 844, motor vehicle registration fee exemption for unemployable veterans. This is my third and hopefully final time bringing this bill before the committee. So an issue it was brought to me a few years ago. So right now, veterans with 100% disability get free vehicle registration in the state of Maryland. However, there's a subset of veterans that have a technical designation called unemployable. They receive all the same benefits as someone with 100% disability, right? But they don't have that technical 100% designation. Therefore, through that technicality, they are not eligible for that benefit. So what this bill seeks to do is close that loophole and bring those individuals in line with their fellow veterans with 100% disability. And we know this is an issue because just 2 years ago, this committee passed the bill I introduced to close that loophole for DNR registrations. So this committee and the body and the General Assembly has recognized this is an issue that we need to fix. Now let's just fix that final loophole for these unemployable veterans for vehicle registration. 2 years ago, I had a great conversation with the committee chair, and the concern was about the physical note, and it was a rightful and legitimate concern. And so we were able to close that physical note and cut it in half. We got it under $90,000. Unfortunately, with the vehicle registration fee increases, it has pushed that number back up closer to a number we do not like. With that being said, I do agree with the physical notes assessment where there's 4,000 individuals in Maryland that may use this, and roughly about half that are eligible for this, and about half would use it. That's probably a pretty accurate number. One of the things we did with the bill, also to cut the number in half, is individuals with 100% disability get to register up to 2 vehicles with no registration fee. In an attempt just to bring some equity to those individuals, this bill only allows individuals that are unemployable to only have 1 vehicle with no vehicle registration fee, trying to minimize the impact to the extent possible on the state. So again, all we're trying to do is give folks who've earned this benefit, the General Assembly has recognized they've earned this benefit. We're trying to just close a simple, legitimate oversight to make sure these individuals get the benefits that we already have demonstrated we feel they deserve. With that, I would request a favorable report.
Chair Gorman, good morning, and distinguished members of this committee. My name is David Lutzow. I'm a Senior Master Sergeant, retired United States Air Force, and a Maryland Military Coalition Director. And we're here to strongly request a favorable report for House Bill 844. Delegate Griffith's bill is just one example of how the veterans whose disability rating that is less than 100% but are being compensated at 100% due to their unemployability are looked at differently than those veterans who are 100% disabled rating. As I outlined in my written testimony, and Google is your friend, there are 43 states that have taken a positive approach to recognize the equality between these 2 ratings. There are 7 states that don't even mention unemployable veterans. I also mentioned fiscal notes. California and Maryland was one of those 7. I also mentioned fiscal challenges. California provides the same single vehicle registration fee exemptions for unemployable veterans, despite by 2028 facing a $35 billion deficit. In addition to a single vehicle registration fee, New York also provides a non-revenue Easy Pass for them. Basically, that's free travel anywhere that Easy Pass is accepted. So, if these states facing huge deficits can either accept the revenue loss or develop some sort of revenue offset, why can't Maryland? These Maryland veterans have been ignored too long, and it's time for Maryland to take a firm stance and show these veterans that this state is willing to put veterans first over fiscal notes or budget challenges. For these reasons, we ask for a favorable report on House Bill 844, and we would like to thank Delegate Griffith for his continued support of military uniformed services veterans in Maryland. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Delegate Griffith, for your doggedness on the bill. I didn't realize your bill was to make us more like California. That's good to know.
I mean, California and Chesapeake, right?
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question, Delegate, is So first of all, there is a difference, I guess, between unemployable disabled veterans and 100% disabled veterans. 100% disabled veterans are a lot of them are also going to be unemployable.
Correct.
Okay, but we're talking about those who are not 100% disabled but are unemployable.
So it's a federal technical
It is?
term.
That was going to be my question.
It's a federal designation, so they are deemed unemployable.
Okay.
So they receive the same benefit as someone with a 100% rating, but through a technicality, they may not be able to reach that 100% rating threshold. But the federal government says, hey, this person cannot work. They receive all the benefits. And so that's why, of all the veterans that are on disability in the state, less than 4,000 have this unique rating.
Right. And is the definition of that what's incorporated in the bill? I'm trying to figure out what that means, like who we're talking about. So I see there's one second, I see there's a visual acuity requirement in the bill, or impairment in the bill. Is there any requirement that, for example, that would have to be caused by service or?
It is purely, well, again, so Veterans Affairs, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs makes these evaluations and makes these assessments and awards these ratings. So it's purely done. I'm 90% service-connected disability. So to get a rating to the VA, it is service-connected. Okay. So I would not be eligible for this. Right. But again, it's just somebody could be, for whatever reason, oddly 50% disabled. But, so I'm going to tell you mine. Like I'm 70% PTSD. I have 6 other ratings that are between 10 and 20%. And somehow through the weird math of the VA, I add up to 90, right? It's not 10, 20, 30, 40. It's just this weird. And again, these are all federal designations. And this bill is essentially silent on affected designations because we have no control over the designation. These are purely federal service-connected disability designations.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 84. Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Odom.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Hearing that question and response, would it be helpful in the bill if somehow to kind of eliminate the any understanding or lack of understanding of what you're particularly addressing in terms of what it states unemployable disabled veteran? Would it help to have it defined to the degree that it is defined within the Veterans Affairs?
Whatever the committee's willing to do to give these individuals the benefit that we've already recognized they deserve, I'm fine with it.
Okay. And do you understand my
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes Bill here on House Bill 844. We'll turn to House Bill 591, Delegate Beecham, Wacomico County Highway Pedestrian Safety Act.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Barry Beecham, and this is the only committee that I've ever presented bills to, and it is my second favorite committee, appropriations being my #1. So I appreciate what you guys do. I'm here today to present House Bill 591, the Wacomico County Highway Pedestrian Safety Act. I introduced similar legislation last year, and we have made some tweaks to the bill. The purpose of this bill is simple: to prevent serious injury and fatalities on our roadways. This bill seeks to prohibit an individual from standing in a roadway, median, shoulder, or intersection, determined to be inherently dangerous by Wacomico County or a municipality within its borders. Signage will be installed in these areas to alert the public that they cannot loiter in these places. This bill has support of our local government, police departments, the Board of Education. Several other counties across Maryland have similar laws. Basically, the NAACP, our county executive, I'll read you a list of a few of the people that have approved, or the organizations that have approved. Our county council, our state's attorney. Basically, everybody sees the need here for this bill, and it's about safety of the citizens and the visitors of Wicomico County, whether they're on foot or in a vehicle. Thank you for your consideration of this important local legislation. We would request a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chief Mindshine, Chief of Police for the City of Salisbury. Thank you for the committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of House Bill 591, Wicomico County Highway Pedestrian Safety Act. Just to give you some numbers, between January 22 and December 2025, the Salisbury Police Department responded to over 450 calls for service related to solicitation activities impacting the safe flow of traffic in our roadways, shoulders, and busy intersections. In 2025 alone, our officers responded to 120 traffic safety-related incidents, of which 45 of those, 37%, involved aggressive and intimidating behavior of individuals directly impacting the traffic flow. So these are individuals that are very on the edge of traffic or in the traffic flow. In several cases, motorists reported to be confrontational, threatening motorists, threatening drivers, when the solicitors, when the driver did not meet the demand of the solicitor. Other individuals acted aggressively, disorderly. There were several cases where we had to make an arrest, respond to make an arrest. Many other incidents occurring in these inherently dangerous intersections and areas with multiple traffic lanes in busy commercial districts, railroad overpasses, and areas where there's little or no curbing, no sidewalk present. Other areas that were identified also or were designated as red light camera areas, very busy intersections, and have a history of traffic crashes, and it's just another underlying issue that causes these areas to be inherently dangerous. And then you add in the folks in the roadway, and it's just a matter of time before we get a fatality or an accident that's going to occur. Though while we're sympathetic to the personal circumstances that leads individuals to solicit in the roadway in some cases, the volume and the nature of these incidents is a significant risk. Our goal is to prevent these issues and its safety and accountability. And our goal is not to issue citations, but actually to use this as a tool for our officers to engage these individuals and to work with our state's attorney's office to lend assistance to these individuals that are in need, not necessary to write the ticket, but to use it as a tool. Thank you for the extra time.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, for the record, Bruce Periano. I'm here on behalf of the County Executive of Wicomico County in very strong support of this legislation. You should have in your record and members a letter from the County Executive endorsing this legislation. Everybody is for traffic safety and particularly pedestrian safety. We strongly ask, please, that this tool be given to Wicomico County so that not only the county but also the municipalities in the county can use it effectively, not in an improper way. I think you heard it from law enforcement, but I've seen this myself in other areas of the state, and we really need this. As the sponsor indicated, the bill has been tweaked and changed, I presume, from testimony and consideration last session, so that hopefully it's in a better posture before this committee. And on behalf of the county executive, would urge a very favorable report. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill, and to your panel. I'm going to preface my statement, which will work into a question, first by establishing that Calvert County had brought a bill like this before where they wanted to reduce panhandling. And soliciting in roadways. And one of the things I was opposed to is that they wanted to make panhandling illegal, but fill the boot fundraisers and drives still were going to be permitted, right? So how would one be less safe than the other? Now with this bill, I understand that it's really just written towards the aspect of people not being in the highway, right? What I don't want to see happen is, number one, and I don't see it in the bill, I don't see other charitable groups, firehouses, other folks being prohibited from standing in highways as well. And then additionally, I'm not in favor of somebody being penalized or criminalized if they have a mental health issue and issue a citation just for standing in the way. I'm just not, a fan of that. So what do you say to that?
Well, it's ironic that you would ask me that, because I used to be one of those firefighters that stood in the intersection and filled the boot. And there were injuries, and this was all over the state, actually, and there were injuries, and our county, we finally opted out of doing that because, and I agree with you. Now, I will also preface this with, I am the person that when someone comes up, ends up giving them money. I'm not opposed to the solicitation. What I am opposed to is that, doing it in, a dangerous way. And when I say a dangerous way, I feel for the people exactly as you're speaking. I don't think that we should have fill the boot drives where people are standing in intersections. So I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Thank you for that. And may I follow up with the police officer? Sheriff?
Chief.
Chief of Police, thank you. So for the citations, would this citation go on a person's, would it apply points to their driver's license, or how would these be carried out? How will it be tiered, a tiered system? How are the officers going to carry that out?
Thank you. Let me start by saying that, as most agencies are in Maryland right now, our agency is extremely short-handed on officers, right? I'm looking at this and we're discussing this is a tool in the toolbox, right? It's a tool for the habitual offenders. So this is someone, and we have them, not a great deal, but we have them that are habitually in the roadway, habitually. To use this as a tool, for instance, if the citation, if it got to that point, so this isn't something we're going to be issuing citations, just issuing papers at the city. These would be individuals that we have a habitual problem with. The goal in my mind would be to, if the citation's issued, to work with our state's attorney's office to actually introduce other avenues, other resources to these individuals in lieu of having this fine. Sort of like a probation type situation, to be able to give them other avenues and perhaps introduce them to some other services, whether it be mental health services or others.
Do you feel that this bill is written in a way that speaks to that?
I do, because knowing our municipality and our county, knowing the individuals we're dealing with, I do. That is my goal. I think that this gives us the tool to approach those individuals, and in a worst case scenario, have to issue this tickets, and I stress worst case scenario, to issue these tickets to be able to bring that forward and work collectively with other providers. We also have the Salisbury Police Department, a co-responder, if you're familiar with that works in our building with us. This would be a situation where we would introduce these individuals to our co-responder program to also provide them additional services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I have two questions, if I might. The first one is following up on Delegate Long's questions. So this would be a citation for what?
This falls under the Maryland Transportation Code. I believe it would be 215071.
Okay. Okay, so there's already something in code that this would, okay. And is there a fine connected with that, or jail time, or what happens to it?
There is no jail time. I do believe, I'm almost 100%, I'm not quite 100% sure. I think it's a $75 fine.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken.
thank you. And then my second question is for the delegate. Have you, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Delegate.
That's all right. Have you looked at the testimony from the National Federation for the Blind and their request for an amendment? Because, have you seen that?
I have not.
Okay, well, they have submitted testimony that, you know, oftentimes a person who is visually impaired doesn't see the signage and is trying to assess what the traffic is, and so they may be standing even in a dangerous place, and they just want to make sure, from what I read, that they're not cited under that provision. So just wondering if maybe you might want to think about working with them if you know, to address that issue. And that goes along the lines with what Delegate Long brought up too, you know.
Yeah, well, I think the intent of this bill is certainly not to target someone that is blind. You know, it's, you know, the intent of it is to keep people out of the roadway that are in, you know, really, really bad places. And I'll give you an example. I had an employee that was coming home on a Friday afternoon in front of Salisbury University, Route 13 and College Avenue. And there, people sometimes stand out in a little narrow concrete strip that's 2 feet wide, right on the very tip. So any accident, that person, you know, would certainly, you know, be, you know, like injured, no question. And now my employee actually gave the gentleman money, and then it wasn't enough money, and he got upset, and the next thing you know, there's a confrontation in the busiest intersection, or one of the busiest ones, you know, in Salisbury. So that's all we're trying to prevent with this.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Delegate, thank you for the bill. It's definitely something that I'm interested in Baltimore County. Delegate Allen and I share an area in Baltimore County that has some of the highest pedestrian fatalities in the county. In fact, the other day in this area on Pulaski Highway, Route 40, I literally saw a band set up in the middle of the road with a full drum kit and 2 guitars playing in the middle of a very busy 55-mile-an-hour highway. So my question to that is, and this is a stretch of road also that I think would apply, so I'm kind of thinking bigger here, how is inherently dangerous? How is that defined? Maybe Chief, that's for you. Like, how do we define an inherently dangerous? Is it number of pedestrian strikes? Is it number of crashes? And like, how is that defined?
We have several. Thank you for the question. I'll give you an example of an intersection that we have quite a few problems with. It's a railroad overpass. And under that, right downtown, right in our downtown area, where it has hardly any curbing and no sidewalks whatsoever, none. So the reason why it's attractive to the folks that are, you know, the pedestrian traffic that we're talking about is because it's a red light, right? It's a light, so it's a congregation point. And it's extremely dangerous. And we get complaints from motorists, I mean, consistently, as you can see our numbers. And so situations like some of it is by design. It's just by design of the location, the environmental design. And some of it is just, say, on our northern end of our sector of our city and our business district, it's multi-lane intersections where they're out in the medium, stepping out in the roadway to get money or whatever it might be, constantly getting complaints and constantly, as was mentioned, we see it all the time. And our officers are having to respond to this. It's taking away from the officers that we have available. You know what I mean? So, and again, our goal is not to issue the tickets only as a last case. So it's a multitude. It's why the design of some of these intersections, and it's the traffic flow and in our business districts and some of these locations that make them inherently dangerous. And then you add in the red light, as I mentioned, the red light cameras that already have a history of traffic accidents, and then you add in this pedestrian issue, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
Sure. So maybe I'm not asking the question the right way. So there has to be some sort of metric, though, right, to establish that something is inherent. I don't doubt that these roads are designed in a way that can make them inherently dangerous, but is it pedestrian strikes? Is it number of crashes? Like, there has to be some sort of objective metric that demonstrates that an area of road is inherently dangerous. That's what I'm trying to understand is what guides us to know, not just that it's designed poorly, yet the poor design is what often leads to the pedestrian strikes or the crashes there. Like, what will we look at to know that area of road is inherently dangerous?
Several of the intersections, depending on what area of town you're talking about, on the northern end, that data is available. The data is available with the red light camera data, the crashes and so forth. In our downtown area where it's more of a design issue, that data is also available. I can pull that data and take a look at it, but it's not It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Sure.
I don't think it's not a one-size-fits-all. And then the other question is, in some of these areas, it's do we wait for something to occur? In other words, do we wait until we get 2 or 3 accidents? Some areas of our town, we've had complaints say this area needs a red light or stop sign, and then we wait until an issue happens for lights put up or signs put up. So we're really trying to get ahead of this as well.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
I think it does.
Great. As I turn to the remainder of my colleagues, I just want to remind folks, we have 8 more bills, 40 witnesses. This is a local bill we see about 3 or 4 times a session. Delegate Jacobs?
I understand the solicitation issue and the people stepping in the roadway part of it, but we have a political season coming up here soon. People are going to be standing on side roads. Some candidates with signs, some volunteers.
Well, it's okay if they've got my sign, but I don't.
So I'm just wondering if there's, I mean, some people may determine it's inherently dangerous for some people standing there with signs. I don't know, depending on whose sign it is. But I mean, is there going to be like a setback that's going to be okay? Or will these be prohibited from being anywhere near these mediums and sides of the road? That's why I'm just trying to get clarification.
Well, basically.
Maybe you should have the chief answer that question.
The actual parameters of the signage, we're not talking about, I mean, for the city of Salisbury, we're not talking about, every intersection having these signs. We're talking about the ones that have been identified as dangerous. Historically, I understand your question, but again, our goal is not to issue citations to folks that are out maybe picketing or whatever it might be, unless, of course, they happen to be in an area where we've got this high volume of accidents or whatnot. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to deter. Really, it's 3 words. It's prevention, safety, and accountability. Prevention, safety, and accountability are the folks that we're talking about that we inherently have a problem with. As far as location and the setback, that's a very good question. I don't know that we've actually determined that as of yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo.
I'll be quick. 2 quick questions. One is, what's happening in other counties? Has this been established in another county?
Yes.
What county?
Last year, it was 4, I think it was 4 or 5 counties. It was already in place.
Yeah, this is already in place in, I think, 4 other counties, yeah, in the Maryland Transportation Code.
All right, I'll let it go from there. Thank you.
Just as a reminder, some other counties have it, although it's a constitutional question about it, so the other laws probably need to be updated. I believe that brings us to Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a problem, especially in North Salisbury at those intersections. And I would, my colleagues left, but the traffic problem I run into is when 3 cars in front of you wants to stop at the green light to give the guy a $1 bill, and we all pile into the back of everybody. But my question to you is, you've done an effective job there in North Salisbury, but you've pushed them back behind Chick-fil-A and Wawa and Walmart on private property. So do you have a plan to work with the private property owners when they have a problem with them? Have you considered that? That's my only question. Because I see a lot of those people have moved on the private property.
Yes. We do work with them. I mean, that's not that's not the intention here. This would be the inherently, as we discussed, dangerous. We do, up to the Chick-fil-A, like you're talking about, work with them on what we can do as far as, like, you might have noticed the shrubbery trees or whatnot, the areas have been cut back. And our officers are. It's a difficult situation, and we're trying to work with the business owners and whatnot. But sometimes it is a matter of where they're going to be. Are they going to be here or are they going to be there? And it's constantly just moving them along. So it's a larger problem. It's just it's a larger problem than that. But we work with all our business owners, constantly get the calls. We have officers actually each day assigned to these tasks, these type of tasks, to work with our business owners on problems like this.
I'd like to add to that, and that is that the example, like at North Point, by putting a sign up to keep them off of Route 13, it would basically push them back to, say, the entrance of Home Depot. I would have no problem with them soliciting there because the cars aren't doing 50 miles an hour as they come by. What this is a pedestrian safety act. What we're trying to do is we're trying to save the pedestrian and the motorist in turn, because no one wants to basically collide with a pedestrian. So that's what we're trying to eliminate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 591.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We had a virtual witness, but they were not on there.
Yeah, no, she actually canceled and sent the chief basically a text and said that, she's in favor of the bill.
Great. So, thank you again for the bill. HB 1019, Delegate Howard, School Bus Transition, Propane-Powered School Buses, Grant Program Fund and Purchase. If you have a panel, bring them up, and thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, colleagues. Good to see everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Delegate Seth Howard, and I'm extremely pleased to present HB 1019, School Bus Transition, Propane-Powered School Buses, Grant Program Fund and Purchase, as stated by the Chair. This bill alters the existing provisions relating to funding and grants for transitioning to zero-emission school buses to include propane-powered school buses. Currently, legislators and constituents are pushing for a full-fledged switch from diesel to electric-powered school buses. Integrating propane-powered school buses will be more economically and environmentally optimal for the state of Maryland. As Marylanders, our shared goal is to reduce emissions as much as possible while remaining efficient in our efforts. A propane-powered bus will last just as long as traditional diesel buses, but it will also reduce emissions by 97%. Electrically powered school buses cost twice as much as propane-powered school buses, with electric school buses at approximately $399,000 as outlined in the fiscal note, and propane buses at approximately $156,000. Lower cost equals more deployment equals maximize our further carbon reductions. The battery in those electric vehicles needs to be replaced approximately every 7 years. The differential is substantial in terms of the reduction of emissions without having to deal with additional costs to replace electric batteries. This tool is ready to deploy immediately, as we say, shovel ready. So the time to act is now. Let's come together as colleagues, community leaders, and legislators for a strong approach to reducing emissions and meeting realistic cost expectations. Our environment, our future, and our businesses depend on it. Let me just say this. We all know the easiest way to get from A to B is a straight line. This bill is that straight line. I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Randy, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Randall Jubb. I'm president of Jubb's Bus Service. I'm an Anne Arundel County public school contractor. Our transition to propane has not merely been smooth, but strategically disciplined in operational refinement rather than the disruptive overhaul. We transport approximately 12,150 students per day, amounting to more than 2.18 million students annually, a scale that demands consistency, safety, and fiscal responsibility. We currently operate 35 buses, representing 35% of our fleet, a meaningful commitment rather than a symbolic adoption. Our migration from diesel was driven by persistent emission system complications that eroded efficiency and increased downtime. Gasoline offered little technology advancement, while electrification presented unresolved variables such as infrastructure investment, battery degradation, range limitations, and life cycle cost volatility. For an operation of our magnitude,
Uncertainty translates directly into risk exposure. Our objective has been twofold: to provide a cleaner burning transportation environment for our students while materially lowering maintenance expenditures, strengthening our fleet dependability. In cold weather conditions, propane units have demonstrated superior startup reliability and faster warm-up cycles than their diesel counterparts, enforcing their operational consistency. We maintain ongoing dialogue with operators who have integrated electric buses into their fleets, carefully evaluating both benefits and constraints, initial capital investment, long-term operational costs, reliability, and route range remain significant considerations. Find it interesting that a neighboring county has decided to purchase a very large propane generator to charge all their electric buses. So I just say to them, buy propane. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Marty Lostrom. I am the Executive Director of the Maryland School Bus Contractors Association. We represent 250 school bus contractors in 20 out of our 24 jurisdictions. That's approximately 51% of our public school buses, covering over 51 million miles a year. We are here in support of HB 1019. Last fall at our annual convention in Lithicum, we invited the MDE representative of this program to come and speak to our membership. After that time, I checked in with our membership to see how they felt about the EV program, and they had a lot of concerns, some of which you heard here, mostly having to do with the infrastructure of the level 2 charging to rural counties. While a densely populated county might have an easier time with it adapting to electric, rural counties are going to have a very difficult time getting that kind of power out to their depots and their corrals. As mentioned, there's concern about the cold weather life of the batteries, the range and distance that a rural county school bus contractor travels is quite more than a densely populated area. And we noted the costs of the buses, $146,000 for a diesel, $156,000 for a propane, and an electric is right now $399,000. It's also been noted to our contractors to be prepared that in 2027, there is a change to the emissions that is going to raise the price of diesel school buses by $20,000. That makes the propane school bus actually less costly than a diesel school bus. Our small businesses are also, they look at this as an investment. An EV bus life battery is about 6 to 7 years. The depreciation value, the replacement value of those batteries is more than the 6 to 7 year depreciation value of the actual bus, making the bus a write-off at this point. There is no value in the bus. We ask that you, in conclusion, support this bill. We are serious about cutting emissions in an uncomplicated and fiscally responsible way. Thank you.
Great. Delegate Howard, we have a couple of virtual witnesses. Are they like on a panel with you? Yes? Okay. Yes. We'll bring up Stephen Whaley, Bluebird Corporation.
My name is Steve Whaley, Chair Gorman and Vice Chair and members of the committee. I am the Alternative Fuels Manager for Bluebird Corporation, where we've been building school buses for the last 100 years. And we are in favor of this bill. Today, there's 4 power options in student transportation. There's diesel, gasoline, electric, and propane. Although all of them meet the EPA regulatory emission standards, the EPA considers 2 of these much cleaner and provides funding for school districts on a federal level for electric and propane-powered buses. Our electric buses provide 100% reductions in tailpipe emissions. But our propane buses are certified to provide 90% tailpipe emissions reductions, and in some cases more when mobile emission equipment is put on there to test them in duty cycles. EV buses cost $250,000 more than a diesel bus, and propane buses cost $10,000 more than a diesel bus. There's 400,000 diesel buses on the road today in the United States. We've deployed over 3,500 electric buses, and Bluebird has sold more than any other provider. But we also have 23,000 propane buses on the road. EV buses have up to 150-mile range with a 2-hour charge time with a DC level 3 charger, while our propane buses can travel 400 miles between a 10-minute refueling time. Each electric bus needs about a $20,000 charger for it. Equipment for one propane fueling station that can fuel 25 buses is about $60,000, and it's always provided by the propane supplier at no cost because they roll that cost into the price of the fuel for a 1, 2, or 3-year contract. In the state of Maryland right now, it's about $1.68 a gallon for propane in a fleet application. The U.S. is the largest producer of propane in the world. And yes, this is the same propane that goes into your barbecue grill out on the back deck, and it's that clean that we let it touch our food. We ask for a favorable report and vote on this HB 1019 bill. Thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to Becky Minks, Elite School Bus Company.
What happened?
You're on with us.
Hi,
Please
good
go ahead.
afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm new to this Zoom thing. Thank you, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee. My name is Becky Minks. My husband and I own and operate Elite School Bus Company here in Cecil County. We own 26 school buses, 20 of which are propane. We purchased our first propane bus in the fall of 2016 and continued to purchase propane as we were due to replace our school buses each year. Our buses travel approximately 2,200 miles per day, excluding school trips. Our drivers love the fact that you can actually hear and communicate with the students on these buses as they're so quiet compared to our diesels. Almost instant heat and air conditioning, no need for hours-long idle time to get that heat. Saves on fuel and need for buses to constantly idle at school locations. Basic savings alone on oil changes are significant, $600 versus $200. No expensive after treatments and no black dust everywhere. Our infrastructure costs were very low. We worked with our fuel company directly, installed concrete pad, metal concrete filled poles for proper barriers, special electric breaker box for 2 1,000-gallon tanks, all meeting state specifications. We have delivery twice a week, sometimes 3. We would absolutely consider expanding our operation with a grant program such as this. Cecil County has 9 contractors and we operate 131 routes. And I believe other contractors in the county would welcome this grant to also go propane. We therefore ask for a very favorable report and vote on HB 1019. Thank you again for your time. And I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I do not see any questions on this bill. So Delegate Howard, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1019.
Thank you, colleagues.
We'll turn to House Bill 1130, Majority Whip Martinez, State Highway Administration, Maryland Route 410, Pedestrian Safety Action Plan Expansion. And if you have, I think it's.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Ashanti Martinez, here to present House Bill 1130, the State Highway Administration, Maryland Route 410, East-West Highway Pedestrian Safety Action Plan Expansion Bill. The aim of this legislation is to address the documented pedestrian risk created by the highway's design and traffic flow. It will establish the construction of public right-of-ways along East-West Highway, beginning at the intersection with Maryland 500 Queens Chapel Road and extending to US 1 Baltimore Avenue. As currently written, the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan seeks to maintain and improve conditions along Route 410, but it does not address the full extent of documented hazards. Specifically, the existing plan excludes the segment east of Queens Chapel Road towards Baltimore Ave, an area where 410 intersects with 2 major roadways and serves as a critical corridor connecting residential neighborhoods, commercial centers, transportation, as well as schools. Serious pedestrian and vehicular incidents, including severe and even fatal crashes, have occurred in this area. Given the high volume of foot traffic along this corridor, the roadway must be designed to ensure that safe travel for pedestrians and drivers is essential. In Prince George's County, pedestrian-involved crashes account for nearly 25% of Maryland's total pedestrian crashes, a disproportionately high share compared to other counties in Maryland. The expanded action plan would bring a range of improvements from enhanced bike lanes and pedestrian-activated flashing signals to raised crosswalks and updated signage. Importantly, this plan is tailored to the needs of the area. It would not fundamentally alter its character, but rather strengthen protections through targeted, appropriate measures. This expansion is also especially critical as the Purple Line moves towards full operation. Route 410 runs through and connects communities that will directly interface with Purple Line stations, increasing pedestrian activity as residents and visitors travel to and from transit. By strengthening safety infrastructure now, we are preparing these corridors to safely accommodate higher foot traffic and multimodal transportation use. The improvements contemplated under House Bill 1130 would directly benefit municipalities along the corridor, including the city of Hydesville, the city of Riverdale Park, as well as the town of University Park and the city of College Park. As these communities experience increased connectivity and economic activity due to the Purple Line, it is essential that our state infrastructure keeps pace with that growth by prioritizing pedestrian and cyclist safety. With this expansion, we can take decisive steps to reduce preventable deaths across our state while ensuring that major transportation investments are matched with responsible safety planning. This is practical, common sense, and meaningful improvements that can be done to improve the conditions for all Marylanders traveling this roadway. For these reasons, I strongly urge a favorable report on House Bill 1130. For me, this bill is essential because I am proudly one of 2 people here in the legislature that is car-free. And when I travel my district, knowing the crashes and knowing the fatalities is always in the back of my mind because I think about my residents who don't know what we do up here and the work that we need to do to ensure that they're included. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's play a little game. Raise your hand if you're car-free.
My fearless
we got them
chair.
both. Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, great to see you.
Always.
Always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for bringing the bill. I think we all share the goal of 0 fatalities and injuries, and we all have those really known dangerous corridors in our district. So I really appreciate you advocating for your district and focusing. I was just looking at the testimony, and I saw there was some from MDOT that was marked as informational, but they had some serious concerns, it sounds like. I just want to give you a chance to kind of respond to that. Do you think that, it sounds like they're really concerned that expanding this could potentially jeopardize or slow kind of existing plans or existing projects? And I just wanted to kind of give you a chance to respond to that.
I've been having ongoing conversations from the interim. My entire legislative team, district team, the 22 team, you'll see is sponsoring this. My senator on the other house, and then the rest of our colleagues here. We understand their concerns, and I think my response would be priorities get paid for. And so if keeping these areas safe was a priority, we would see it included in the plan. You'll see in the testimony as well a letter from the mayor of Hydesville around the exclusion and why that is impactful for that particular municipality. But then also we have a resident of Hydesville who sent a letter as well to talk directly about why this is needed. Some of the harshest, most intense crashes that have happened on the stretch that was not included.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, thank you to our majority whip. That concludes the bill here on House Bill 1130. Your virtual witness was not in the waiting room.
Okay, well, thank you.
That concludes the bill here on House Bill 1130. We'll turn to House Bill 1169. Delegate Terrassa on behalf of the Howard County delegation, highway speed limits. Welcome back.
I'm back. All right, good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the esteemed ENT. For the record, I'm Delegate Jen Terrassa, and this is still not my last bill here, so I will be back. Thank you for this opportunity to present House Bill 1169, which is a local bill requested by a member of the Howard County Council to address road safety concerns from residents, something I was familiar with as a former county council member. We've all been on those roads, like cul-de-sacs, where 25 miles per hour is just too fast. Think about a small cul-de-sac with children riding their bikes or playing catch in the court. Neighbors want folks to slow down. They place their own slow children at play signs along the street, and they come to the county council saying, 25 is too damn fast, please lower the speed limit. However, under current state law, as you probably are most aware, local governments, including Howard County, are prohibited from posting speed limits under 25 miles an hour. Unless the state specifically gives them permission to do so. And we know lowering the speed limit would make those streets safer for children. This restriction limits the county's ability to implement targeted data-driven safety solutions. House Bill 1169 allows Howard County to be added to the section of the code where Montgomery and Anne Arundel County are already, where they can lower their speed limit to 15 miles per hour after a traffic study. The vote was unanimous in delegation, and I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1169.
Thank you very much, Delegate. I do not see any questions on the bill, so that concludes the bill here on House Bill 1169. We'll turn to House Bill 1170. I think this is Delegate Ziegler on behalf of her delegation, or one of her delegations, Speed Monitoring Systems, Expansion of Authorization, Howard County.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Guyton, colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Natalie Ziegler and Chair of the Howard County Delegation here with House Bill 1170. This is a speed camera bill and a speed presentation. It would authorize the placement of speed cameras on US Route 1, also known as Washington Boulevard, in Howard County. And that is it.
Any questions? Okay, excellent testimony. That concludes Bill House Bill 1170. We'll turn to House Bill 1200, another former ENT committee member, Delegate Weibel. Vehicle laws, electronic and video tolls, exemption for registered owners undergoing cancer treatment. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, honorable members of the committee, and Delegate Baker. For the record, I am Delegate Weibel, pleased to present House Bill 1200. This legislation would exempt the registered owner of a vehicle from being liable for payment of tolls if the owner is undergoing and on their way to cancer treatment. On the surface, the bill may not seem to have much substance, but to the individual that reached out to my office who is undergoing cancer treatments, it is of utmost importance. The quote from To Kill a Mockingbird comes to mind: "Don't judge a man until you've had a chance to step in their shoes and walk around a bit." Just as we had the discussion on the House floor this morning regarding mandated coverage for cancer patients, this bill shows compassion towards those experiencing what is likely the most traumatic event in their life at a minimal cost. Several states extend similar exemptions to their residents, including Virginia and New York. Virginia provides for medical toll reductions for patients traveling for cancer-related treatments and income-based toll relief and veterans traveling for service-connected ratings. New York provides for an individual disability exemption plan. Admittedly, there are some logistics issues in the implementation of the program, and I do believe that the language in the bill as drafted needs some modification so the discount or exemption could be accomplished electronically through the transponder program and without the need for additional MDOT staffing. I have read MDOT's letter that says exemptions are not allowed for health reasons under their trust agreement, but they do indicate that they offer discount plans, and maybe in lieu of a complete exemption, the program could instead be a discount program. As you know, Maryland is home to world-class cancer treatment centers. This bill would simply help those cancer patients reach those centers with minimal disruption to their finances and travel. I thank you for your attentiveness and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1200 on behalf of all Marylanders maneuvering through the difficult road of cancer treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for advocating for your constituents. We have a question from Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Delegate Weibel. It's always good to see you.
Yes, good to see you.
This is very interesting. Do you have stats on the number of individuals generally who have to go well out of their own area to an area hospital, thereby having to go through tolls for treatments generally, cancer treatments?
I do not have any statistics on that. I assume that they're not available because it's probably just not being tracked currently. I assume that it would be minimal, but I don't know.
Be interesting to find that out.
Okay, I do not see any further sorry, Delegate Foley.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for this bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So my question is, this looks like it's aimed at, is this with people with transponders? Is that who is getting the exemption here?
Well, the gentleman that came to me actually does not have a transponder, but I do think that it could be administered through the transponder program.
Okay.
That's why the way the bill was drafted, and I was working with the bill drafter, and I'm not sure they actually reached out to MDOT. He was drafting it on a after-the-fact basis that once you went through the transponder, you got the ticket in the mail, then you provided the evidence. But Virginia, I believe, administers the program through their transponder program, not after the fact.
Well, also I was thinking of license plates. Like a lot of times it's just reading the license plates.
Correct.
Yeah, but, and that was my question really. Is this for everybody, including the people that don't have a transponder, or is it just for people with a transponder?
I think in order to administer it most effectively, they would have to have a transponder.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we do have one additional witness, Lance Kilpatrick with American Cancer Society.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I am the Government Relations Director for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. This year, it's estimated that 38,160 Marylanders are going to hear the words, "You have cancer." In addition, it's sadly estimated that 11,280 Marylanders will fall victim to this deadly disease. Now, Maryland is blessed to have some of the best cancer centers in the world, as the delegate referenced. University of Maryland Greenbaum Cancer Center, Johns Hopkins Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center, Maryland Proton Treatment Center, just to name a few. But not everyone lives close by, and Marylanders from the Western Mountains or the Eastern Shore have to travel hours to get treatment, taking time off from work. This is one reason why the American Cancer Society created Hope Lodge in Baltimore, to be a place for getting treatment from far away, to have a place to stay, eat, and have community. But they still have to get there, and transportation obstacles are the #1 barrier for cancer patients to receiving treatment. In 2024, the American Cancer Society's Road to Recovery program provided almost 2,000 rides in the Maryland and DC areas for patient appointments. Transportation challenges can lead to missed appointments, and the lack of transportation options has shown to lead to higher morbidity rates and earlier deaths. House Bill 1200 is a small but important step to acknowledge the physical, emotional, and financial plight of cancer patients. Tolls to and from appointments add up. Having one less thing to worry about is one step closer toward recovery. ACS CAN thanks the sponsor for bringing this bill forward, and we ask the committee for a favorable report of House Bill 1200. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1200. We'll turn to our own Delegate Lewis, House Bill 1113, Vehicle Laws, Bus Obstruction Monitoring Systems, and Bus Stop Zones. And if you have a panel, please bring them up.
This is, thank you. You know how sometimes you don't get to meet all of your sponsor panelists until you see them. So thank you for being patient as we get settled. I'm Delegate Robin Lewis here on behalf of House Bill 1113, Bus Obstruction Monitoring Systems and Bus Stop Zones. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed colleagues. So you guys have heard about bus service over the years. You've heard me come before you and talk about the importance of improving the quality of bus service for the people of Maryland. And when we talk about the quality of bus service, we're really talking about speed, frequency, reliability, but we also mean safety, the ability for riders to safely get on and off the bus. And why does bus service matter? Let me remind you again, especially for my new colleagues. This matters because hundreds of thousands of people ride the Maryland Transit Administration buses every day in the Baltimore metro region, and it doesn't refer to all the folks using commuter buses and other types of locally run buses around the state. But just think about MTA buses. We're talking about Baltimore City, Baltimore County, maybe a little bit in Anne Arundel. 135,000 people, Marylanders, every day hop on and off an MTA bus in 2025. There are about 50 million riders for core bus service in the Baltimore region annually, and we're almost back up to our pre-COVID ridership numbers. The buses make up about 70% of MTA's total ridership. That means the people who use the Maryland Transit Administration transit services, over 70% are bus riders. So with all of these people, all of our fellow Marylanders depending on this essential public good to get to work, to get to school, to get to their doctor's appointments. We just heard about how important it is to access cancer treatment, to pursue job and educational opportunities. Those folks are counting on us to deliver good service for them. So the bill before you asks you to enable the MTA and other local transit services in Maryland to use camera enforcement to enforce or protect the areas around the bus stops. I'm calling these bus stop zones. You'll see that the term used in the bill. We want to enable MTA and other local transit services to use amazing, emerging and improving camera technology, just like we use for speed cameras and stop signs, to keep obstructions out of the way of the areas around the bus stop. Over the last several years, I've been here in front of you all asking you to pay attention to bus stop service and expand the ability to use cameras to enforce or protect dedicated bus lanes. We're now talking about the whole area around the bus, all bus stops, not just on dedicated lanes. I will just say that I'm aware of some amendments to the bill, some proposed amendments. The Maryland Transit Administration has asked that we refine the language in the bill to more explicitly define what a bus stop zone is. I'm happy to do that. Actually, a few folks testified that they'd like to see a more clear definition of a bus stop zone. A couple of others, including Bikemore, for example, have asked that local governments have more authority to increase the stringency of enforcement conditions. So I'm happy to work on that as well. I'll close by saying this, because I could literally talk about buses all day. This is a bill that will increase the affordability of transportation for Maryland households, for our constituents who sent us here. This bill will help increase accountability. This is a better government, better governance bill that improves the service that the government delivers to the people. And this is also an opportunity bill. This increases the access to opportunity that our constituents will have as they move around their daily lives, pursuing opportunity for their families. So with that, I'll end my testimony and ask a favorable report. Now I'll turn it to my panel, and I think the best panelist to start with would be, you're from the, from AI and WMATA. I think I'll turn first to my panelists from WMATA and then to my panelists from the Hayden AI firm.
Certainly, thank you so much for that. Now, I do have a few others listed on here for you. Ms. Veronica Macbeth, is she here? Would she like to join your panel, if so?
I'm not sure if she's here in person. Love to have her.
Okay.
If not, I do believe she submitted written testimony.
Yes, we just have a little note here that she wanted to be here in person. All right, thank you. You may begin.
Chair Corman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Reem Rayef, and I work in the Government Relations Office at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, or WMATA. I'm here to urge this committee's support for HB 1113, which facilitates bus service that is both fast and safe by enabling camera enforcement of bus stop zones or the curbside area immediately surrounding bus stops, in addition to bus lanes. We know that camera enforcement of bus lanes and bus stop zones does work to support fast bus service. 3 years of experience in DC tells us that. We also know that bus stops are constantly obstructed by drivers in Maryland. We have good data on this too, included in my written testimony. At WMATA, we operate bus service, so of course, speed and reliability are important to us. But safety is a core principle undergirding service excellence, so I really want to emphasize how bus stop zone enforcement supports safety for our customers. Each time a bus stop is obstructed by a driver as a bus approaches, a number of unsafe scenarios unfold. 1, the bus blocks the travel lane to pick up and drop off customers. Drivers behave erratically and make traffic worse. 2, bus customers are forced to walk into the street between parked cars, potentially navigating traffic, to access the curb or board the bus. Imagine the hazard this presents for someone who's pushing a stroller, a person in a motorized wheelchair, a person with a vision impairment, or a child. 3rd, operators cannot deploy the ADA ramp connecting the bus to the curb. Again, imagine being in a motorized wheelchair trying to get off the bus without the ramp. Imagine trying to get on that bus while pushing your children in a stroller or your groceries in a heavy cart. When the bus can't get to the curbside, it becomes a non-option for the people who need it most. People who cannot drive, who choose not to drive, or for whom it is not safe to drive. All that so that someone can save a few minutes or a few steps. Good policy discourages abuse of public space, especially when it precludes others from the intended use of that space. HB 1113 is one such policy. It unlocks the full benefits of Maryland's investments in bus infrastructure and makes bus transportation a great option for all Marylanders, not just those who are willing and able to walk into traffic to ride the bus. I urge your favorable report. Thank you.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Ann Shikani. I'm Director of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs at Hayden AI. We're a US-based company that works with transit agencies, including WMATA, to help stop illegal parking obstructions that undermine safe, accessible, and reliable public transit. I'll also note that our bill is being introduced as SB 936 and sponsored by Senator West and co-sponsored by Chair Smith and co-chair Waldstreicher. Transit-mounted bus parking enforcement is being adopted by agencies across the country to reduce illegal parking both in bus lanes and at bus stops. These programs are up and running in Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Santa Monica, and in the San Francisco Bay Area. One thing that all of these programs have in common is that they all protect bus stop zones from illegal parking. Under the law that was passed in 2024, Maryland excluded bus stops. While the law did allow bus stops that are adjacent to bus lanes that are being enforced, this exception would only encompass a tiny fraction, probably less than 1% of bus stop zones in Maryland. The impact of this exclusion is especially harmful to those who need its protection most. For example, WMATA's Clear Lane program enforces both bus lanes and bus stop zones from illegal parking in DC. But when those buses cross into Maryland, only a small fraction of the bus stops can be enforced, only those that happen to be directly on a bus lane. That means that disabled, seniors, families with small children using transit outside of the bus lanes will be more likely to have to cross into active transit or traffic to board a bus. Everywhere else, enforcement of illegal parking at bus stops is considered essential. Illegal parking in bus stops greatly increases hazards, especially for people with disabilities and seniors. For example, blocked bus stops make boarding dangerous and sometimes impossible for wheelchair users. Thank you for your time, and I urge a favorable report.
Thank you so much. We also have our friend from the Federation of the Blind, Rhonda Othman, online virtually. Hi, you may start whenever you like. Hopefully we'll be able to hear you a little bit better today.
I hope so. How is that coming through?
Much better. You sound like yourself.
I don't sound like a monster. Great. Thank you so much. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee. My name is Ronza Othman, and I am the president of the National Federation of the Blind of Maryland. NFB of Maryland is the state's oldest and largest organization for blind, low vision, and deaf-blind individuals. The thousands of members of the National Federation of the Blind, including myself, are almost exclusively public transportation users, and we use it to get to work, to doctor's appointments, worship services, shopping, and throughout our communities. This is essentially a safety bill. As a blind person, I need the bus to pull up to the bus stop so I can hear it when it arrives. When the bus stop is blocked, which happens all the time, the bus does not come to the stop where I'm waiting. I wait at the stop itself because it's a tactily distinct feature that tells me I am in the right place. But when the stop is blocked, the bus pulls up somewhere else, and I either can't find it or I can't hear the auditory announcement to tell me where it is or which bus it is or where it is going. So I try to run to catch the bus somewhere else, navigating sidewalk obstructions or worse, walking in the street when the bus is not pulled up to the curb. I've missed the bus, nearly been hit by traffic, and tripped on tree roots and other obstructions trying to get to a bus that was not in the proper place. People using wheelchairs and mobility aids have similar issues because a bus stop is situated in a way that a ramp extends to it and makes it feasible for safe onboarding and offboarding. This is, as I said, a safety bill for those with disabilities, and it's necessary and urgently needed. Bus stop obstruction monitoring will deter drivers from blocking the bus stop by creating an enforcement mechanism which is effective, incorporates due process, and incorporates privacy. This bill essentially expands existing law to incorporate the spaces with people with disabilities need in the first place. The 2024 bill explicitly excluded me and my community, and we've been waiting for many years, multiple years since then, for bus stop enforcement to be corrected. People with disabilities shouldn't have to wait anymore to safely and independently move about our communities. And
Thank you
therefore, I
so
urge a
much.
favorable report. And thank you so much. Happy to answer
Thank you
questions.
so much. We always learn quite a bit when you're before us, so it's very valuable information. Seeing no questions for this panel, that ends the hearing on House Bill 1113, and we're going to move on now to House Bill, right? Yeah. 862, Delegate Stein, required crew, railroads, required crew for movement of freight. And I think we've heard this one a few times in the past. If you want to refresh us when you get up there. Certainly.
Oh, good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, Delegate Dana Stein in support of HB 862. And as you noted, Madam Chair, this is a bill that's been heard before. However, it is revised, and I'll go into that in a minute. The core requirements of HB 862 is the same as what has been considered and passed by the committee before. It requires freight trains operating in the state that also share tracks with high-speed passenger rail be staffed with a minimum of a two-person crew to operate the train. The bill includes a civil penalty for the willful violation of the two-crew requirement. And as we've discussed, but just for the benefit of new committee members, having a minimum of two-person crew operating trains throughout the state is vital in ensuring trains run safely. And this is the really important part. In the event of an emergency, having a second crew member on board a train to serve as the incident commander is crucial. And the movement to enact this important rail safety measure nationwide was the result of several tragedies involving train accidents. And similar legislation has been enacted by multiple jurisdictions following tragic train derailments that led to the destruction of property, towns being evacuated, and lives being lost here in the U.S. and abroad. The two-person crew requirement language is very similar to legislation that the committee and the General Assembly has passed, but the major difference is in this bill, Section 2A, requirement that the states of New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia pass substantially similar legislation for this bill to take effect. And we feel this is a reasonable compromise that recognizes the importance of rail safety while also recognizing the importance of maintaining the competitive advantage for the Port of Baltimore. The states of Washington, California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, West Virginia, New York, and now New Jersey have passed this legislation. So this committee has supported rail safety legislation many times in the past, and I ask that it do so again. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair Guyton and members of the committee. My name is Brittany Garrett. I'm a Maryland resident and train conductor for 7 years. The first listed goals of the state rail plan is to enhance the safety and security of Maryland's multimodal transportation system and provide a transportation system that is resilient to natural and man-made disasters. With that goal in mind, I'm urging a favorable report on House Bill 862. I'd like to take this time to highlight a railroad accident that occurred in Wyowago, Wisconsin. A freight train containing hazardous materials derailed just outside of this Wisconsin town. 30 cars derailed containing liquid petroleum and sodium hydroxide, causing a fire. The conductor on the derailed train served as first responder and incident commander before the fire department and emergency services arrived on scene. He prevented a great tragedy by acting quickly, separating the non-derailed cars from the fire-engulfed derailed cars. On arrival, the fire department's chief concern was that the train cars would explode. They quickly determined that the town's 2,200 residents had to be evacuated. The residents were notified they had to immediately evacuate, leaving their homes and belongings behind. This wasn't an orderly evacuation. Imagine being in your home with your family, having a firefighter out front of your house yelling, "Evacuate now." The residents didn't know where to go when they returned, nor could they ask any questions about what was going on. If this happened in Baltimore, Hyattsville, Cumberland, or any other densely populated community that freight trains operate through in Maryland, it would be catastrophic. Following this terrible accident, Wisconsin passed two-person crew requirements into law. I sincerely urge a favorable report on House Bill 862 because the state's rails plan's #1 goal and ours are one and the same, the safe operation of railroads in Maryland.
Good afternoon. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Tom Cahill. I'm a 30-year locomotive engineer and resident of Maryland Legislative District 5. The rail industry lives by the words safety first, and with that in mind, I'm here asking for a favorable report on House Bill 862. Historically, safe working rules and procedures for rail workers have been written in blood. In 2013, in the town of Lac-Mégantic, Canada, a train loaded with hazardous materials, staffed with only one crew member, ran away and derailed. The train ran away due to the single crew member failing to properly secure the train. The derailment essentially destroyed the town of Lac-Mégantic, killing 47 people, destroying 115 businesses, and contaminating 50 miles of waterways. Following this tragedy, the Canadian government banned single-person freight train operations. The railroads argue the states shouldn't act on crew size because there's a federal rule in place. To that I say, a rule does not have the strength of a law and can easily be rescinded with the stroke of a pen. The second argument they make is that their technology, positive train control, renders it unnecessary to have multiple crew members because the technology will automatically apply the brakes of the train if appropriate action isn't taken by the engineer. Technology is great when it works. Unfortunately for this technology, far too often it does not. Mark Commuter Rail frequently has to cancel its trains because of connectivity issues with PTC. Secondly, PTC cannot perform brake tests, walk a train, clear obstructions from a track, nor can it detect if there is an obstruction. The truth is, split-second judgment is required and needed to operate trains safely, something PTC cannot provide. The Proactive Rail Safety Bill has twice passed the General Assembly. It relieves me to know that in its wisdom, the General Assembly understands that it's better to be proactive than reactive when it comes to rail safety. I thank you for your consideration, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Madam Co-Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name is Matt Darby. I'm an attorney who practices here in Maryland, and I'm also a designated legal counsel for the Smart Transportation Division, so the union that these folks are a member of. As such, I deal a lot with injuries that occur on the railroad, and I can tell you that the importance of a two-person crew could be illustrated by a case that I had fairly recently, where a coal train was coming out of Cumberland into Hagerstown, and they had a conductor and engineer, and they stalled. It was a 100-car coal train, which weighs obviously many thousands of tons. It stalled coming into Hagerstown because of a grade, and it was underpowered and started to slide backwards. And so it was, the back end of the train was unprotected, and there were several crossings that had the train not come under control, the train would have crossed over. That would have been unprotected. The conductor jumped out of the train that was moving and was able to tie down handbrakes on the train before it reached any of those crossings. So those sorts of things happen on a regular basis, not just the disasters and tragic situations that we hear about in the news. However, I'm here primarily to address any legal issues. There is sometimes an opposition argument that this law is preempted by one or more federal laws. I think that the fact that these other states have gotten beyond that argument is illustrative of the fact that it's not correct. Safety is the key. That's what states, one of the big issues that you face every day. That's a uniquely state issue. We're not trying to regulate commerce like the RRR Act did, that's often cited as an issue for preemption. That issue was purely out of time. So I'll stop here, but certainly if there are any legal questions about preemption, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
It must be my lucky day. I get to talk to my favorite committee twice. I'm playing a number tonight I'm going to hit. For the record, my name is David Pendleton. I'm the director for the Maryland Safety and Legislative Board for the Transportation Division of SMART. Our mission is first and foremost to seek to ensure our members have a safe work environment. And in that vein, I'm here today urging the committee to vote favorable for HB 862. Freight trains operate literally across the street from vital government buildings and right through the hearts of cities and towns such as Cumberland, Rockville, Perryville, and Baltimore City. Freight railroad operations are complex and often entail the transport of highly hazardous materials such as crude oil, chlorine gas, and many other chemicals. There has been an increase in the shipment of these materials as well as significantly longer trains operating over the uniquely and widely varying geographical terrain of our state. This, coupled with the possibility of decreasing train crew size, creates a significant localized safety hazard to the public and the communities our trains operate through. A freight train derailment that occurred in East Palestine, Ohio, where a train carrying hazardous materials derailed and caught fire, caused the evacuation of the entire community. This tragedy in East Palestine has inflicted horrors on the residents of this town, has cost billions of dollars in claims and remediation costs. Years later, traces of vinyl chloride and other hazardous materials in the train's consists are still found in the town's soil, waterways, and furnace filters. This derailment stands as a powerful reminder of the potential for disaster with freight rail. Fortunately, it did have a fully sufficient two-person crew that was able to stop that from being a far greater tragedy. These three accidents that were highlighted by my colleagues and myself showed how quick action taken by a two-person train crew helped save lives and property, while the operation of a single-person train crew led to the destruction of lives and property. Support for two-person crew legislation has been broad in Maryland. The cities of Baltimore and Cumberland, along with the counties of Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Montgomery, and Prince George's, have either passed resolutions or provided letters of support for passage of expansive road safety legislation that includes two-person crew. I have included them in my written testimony, and I ask again for a favorable report.
Thank you, David. It's our lucky day as well. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much,
Delegate
Madam
Stein, I do have two more favorable in-person testimonies here. Are they a part of your panel, or would you like to have questions now?
Go ahead, give me the questions. Go ahead, give me the questions. We can answer them.
Yeah, happy to take questions now.
Certainly. Then we'll go right to Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Stein, for again bringing this back. I forgot your name, Mr. Counsel. Can you talk?
Darby.
Darby, can you please talk a bit more about the preemption? Because I think that is important.
Sure, absolutely. And so there are three main arguments that are raised. One is that deals with what's called the Triple R Act. It's the act back in 1973 that was obviously federal in nature, and it was in response to the crisis in rail transportation at the time because of the bankruptcy of several Class I railroads. And so the federal government took the rather extraordinary step of creating Conrail, which was government-owned at the time. At the time, there were 4 or 5 person crews, and so the Congress did not want states to be able to mandate retaining that number of crew members when other railroads that were competitive were reducing crew members. And so as a result, they basically said, you can't pass a law that addresses number of crew members, but it was from the perspective of a competitive issue of Conrail vis-a-vis other railroads at the time. It had nothing to do with safety. There was no safety issue involved in that. Conrail went out of existence in 1998 when it was purchased by Norfolk Southern and CSX. And so there was a study by the FRA that basically said, look, this law is really antiquated, it's obsolete, but they never they never officially rescinded it. And then there's the General Federal Railroad Safety Act, right, which is it's a great law, very important in railroad safety. However, it doesn't address crew size. So in order for preemption to be found appropriate, congressional action has to really subsume the entire subject matter, and it hasn't. And so therefore, there's no issue there. And then thirdly, sort of as a last-ditch effort on this argument, there is a question as to whether or not the Interstate Commerce Commission Termination Act, which is what created the Surface Transportation Board, has some role in regulating safety, which it clearly does not. It's really about the organization of railroads, et cetera, and the impact on business and stuff like that. So it has no role in safety. So those are the three main arguments that have obviously been addressed by the other states that are all passing this law. So, in my view, there's no impediment because of a federal preemption argument to pass this safety legislation.
And is that sometimes why folks would say wait for the federal government to potentially create it? Then it keeps the states from not having to do it when they could do it.
That's right, of course, but then we're subject to the vagaries of what happens in D.C.
Right.
And so, and
we should do it at the state.
That's right.
Perfect, thank you.
Also, Delegate Boyce, if I may expand. We have an opinion from the Attorney General that finds that Maryland is well within its rights to regulate in this case because it is from a safety standpoint. Secondly, it's also noted in the fiscal note and the fiscal summary that in the absence of changes to federal law and or regulations, this bill has no material effect on governmental operations or finances as discussed below. So we do have the AG opinion that affirms our position, and Department of Legislative Services also affirms that opinion as well.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Delegate Boyce. Now I'd like to go to Delegate Nawrocki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, thanks for the bill again. I appreciate the change from last year with the different states, but I do want to ask a question about that. Why those 3 states? As I see, it looks like it's Pennsylvania, New York, and Virginia. Why not all the states around us, right? Obviously, Pennsylvania and Virginia, they fit that, but why not Delaware? And if we're kind of looking regionally, if we're going 2 states away to New York, why don't we go 2 states away to the south and also say North Carolina? Like, why those 3 there?
If you don't mind, Delegate, I will defer to Mr. Pendleton. You can answer that better than me.
Hey, sir. Good to see you, sir.
It's always a pleasure, Delegate Nawrocki. The reason is because Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, they're port states. And so when you look at a rail map, which I've also included in my written testimony, if there were any possibility of freight to leave the state of Maryland, it's either going to go to New York, Jersey, Pennsylvania, or Virginia. So that was the reason why. It's about the port states and maintaining competitiveness for the Port of Baltimore.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, sir.
Okay, very useful information. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Pendleton, I'll address this to you, and Delegate Stein, thank you again for the bill. Where do we stand, following up with Delegate Narga, where do we stand with the other states and D.C. getting their legislation through, since it all ties together at the end of the day?
So the federal rule is in place now. That was passed by the FRA. As for the other states, the state of New York has a two-person crew legislation that's enacted, it's in effect. It has been introduced in Virginia. I don't have any updates on that state at the time. Their session is running the same times as ours, so there's been no action as of right now, to my knowledge. Same thing, it's been introduced in Pennsylvania, but their session also, I don't have an update as far as those states go at this time.
Thank you.
Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Stein, for the bill. Just one thing I want to be clear on, and I'm just a dumb old farmer, but I don't want to get caught up in semantics. We're talking about 2 people on the train, not 2 engineers in the lead engine.
That is correct, sir. Just 2 persons on the train.
2-person crew is 2 people, not 2 engineers in the lead engine. Okay.
That is correct, sir.
All right. That's all I wanted to know.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you. That's, we're discussing the two-man chew again. For the, let me see, this is the 12th time, I believe. But, you know, again, I can't help but notice the testimony from the port and how it significantly affects them. And you know, we've all been cheering along the Howard Street Tunnel project, you know, really getting to the double stack versus single stack issue. And it looks like it's, you know, going to have a financial impact on them. But, you know, they're saying that it could threaten the state's ability to maximize benefits and return on investment for the Howard Street Tunnel project. What say you?
Delegate Jacobs, how you doing today, sir?
Just fine.
So first and foremost, I would respectfully disagree with the port. In order for this bill to go into effect, the federal rule would first have to come out of, that would have to be rescinded. Then after that, the 3 neighboring port states would have to enact similar legislation. So that means Maryland's competition would also have had to have passed this bill. So that's the second part. So these conditions must be met before the bill can even go into place. The return on the investment, the trains are still going to be going in and out of the port double stacked. This law has no material effect on that. Secondly, there are currently 2 persons operating every single train that goes in and out of the port right now. So this bill is not some new mandate. It's just saying maintain the status quo. So that's the 4th thing. The 5th thing I'm assuming you're referring to is the MTA's access agreement with CSX Transportation, the $6 million annually potentially that they would have to reimburse. There is a carve out to that. The carve out is, as long as the federal rule's in place, they don't, Maryland's not on the hook. The second carve out is if they can produce a collective bargaining agreement where it's now down to single person or no person train crews, then yes, Maryland will be on the hook to keep it in place. That access agreement, I believe, was a 10-year agreement that started in 2021. It's now 2026. We just signed a 5-year collective bargaining agreement, which would run this clock clean out to where that language will no longer be in effect. So the odds of this actually affecting the state of Maryland or the Port of Baltimore, I just respectfully disagree with them on that.
Thank you for your clarifying point from your side.
Does that mean I'm gonna get your vote this year?
We'll see.
Come on, man, I gotta keep working, you know. Wait a minute, is this my year? Come on now.
All right, thank you so much for that questioning. Excuse me, sir. Things just get out of hand when the chair leaves. All right, seeing no more questions for this panel, I am going to call up, if you are in the house with us, Mr. Harris and Mr. Alexander to approach the microphone.
Madam Chair.
Both favorable.
My apologies for Mr. Alexander. He actually was part of our team to come up. Unfortunately, he had a medical emergency this morning. He cannot make it, so.
Well, we are sorry to hear that. We hope he is well.
He's a good guy. He was really looking
Okay.
forward to this, but thank you.
Well, we will look forward to hearing from Mr. Harris representing the Teamsters.
Yeah, make it look, man. Feedback.
Delegate Stein, would you stay here? You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay here. Come on. Absolutely. You're welcome to stay here. Yeah.
Yes.
Here we go again, huh? Yep. Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chairman. My name is Herbert Harris. I am the regional chairman for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Rail Conference and the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, and I am a licensed and registered locomotive engineer, Delegate Anderson, so just for the record. I have 32 years of experience in the rail industry, 21 of those years as a rail safety officer and legislative representative. 53% of the agreement rail employees in the United States are represented by the Rail Conference of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, both the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees. And that organization collectively support the favorable approval of HB 826. As always been mentioned by the previous panel, this is an old issue for this legislature, having passed it twice. Your passage of this bill today and again would place Maryland in the vanguard of states taking proactive measures on rail safety. And I won't get into the issue of the preemption and two-man crew regulation has already been addressed by the previous panel. But one of the issues that I want to bring to your attention that's important regarding this legislation is that your approval of this legislation here in Maryland will not only improve the fulsome and safety of the freight rail corridor, but it will improve also passenger rail safety. I am a passenger locomotive engineer, and Maryland has multiple corridors where it shares, high-speed trains share the same commingled corridors with mixed freight and unit freight trains. Because of the introduction of the next generation of passenger rail service and the demand for expanded passenger rail service in Maryland, this legislation makes those corridors safer, because as we zoom by at speeds now up to 135 and 160 miles per hour, it will be good to know that on that adjacent track, on that freight train, as we go by, there will be a licensed locomotive engineer and conductor on those 3.5 mile, 4 mile freight trains now.
Thank
that are
you so
almost
much,
2
Mr.
stories
Harris.
tall.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Madam
your
Chairman.
testimony.
Appreciate your opportunity to address this body.
Absolutely. I don't see any questions for Mr. Harris, so I'm going to call up, if you guys can trade places, and hand the microphones over to Lisa Jones with Norfolk Southern, Sushant Sid, CSX Transportation, and Sean Malone, HJM Norfolk Southern. And as soon as you're ready. It looks like we might have lost Ms. Jones.
It was going to be the beauty of the brains, and you got the beauty. On behalf of Norfolk Southern, my name is Sean Malone. We appreciate the delegates' work on this bill over the years, and I think it's been noted the bill's been narrowly tailored to address this issue. What I really want to address is that it's two levels. Look, the FRA has passed a rule. When Secretary Buttigieg put the rule in place, he made it clear that the laws that are placed at this, it was to keep a patchwork from laws that are being passed throughout the states. There were, I think, 13 or 14 states that had passed a law prior to 2024. That FRA preempts those. That's simply the supremacy clause. I am not a railroad lawyer, but I did get an A in con law in law school. It's pretty well established this area is preempted. But also, Mr. Pendleton's a good lobbyist. He's also a good labor union leader. This is already in the labor contracts. There's not necessarily a dispute here between Norfolk Southern and certainly not the union. We've agreed to it. It's been there for a long time. There's no plans to take it out, and taking out existing clauses in a contract put a presumption. It's a presumption against it. It puts a burden on the moving party, and there's no intent with regard to that. So I appreciate the delegates' doggedness on this bill, the importance of the issue. This issue's been addressed not only in the collective bargaining rule, but it's also been addressed at the federal level. And with that, we urge unfavorable report on the bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sushan Sid here on behalf of CSX Transportation in opposition to House Bill 862. First and foremost, CSX is committed to the safety of its employees, the communities we serve, and the necessary goods we deliver to market. Kind of to echo Mr. Malone's points, again, this bill is not necessary. It is already current practice. It is federally preempted. Two-man crews are currently mandated in the collective bargaining agreement and also by a 2024 Federal Rail Administration rule, again, requiring two-man crews and expressly prohibiting states from passing laws on crew size. Again, this goes to the 3R Act, again, that was done in 1973, that basically says that the FRA has sole authority to and preempt states from regulating crew size to prevent that patchwork of regulatory requirements that hinder a national network from operating effectively. Because if we don't allow that, states will have a, state you will have a different law that contradicts itself. So again, this is federally preempted. This is already current practice. And again, we've seen with respect to West Virginia and Illinois, the federal courts have struck down this law, saying that it is federally preempted. Also, I'd like to get to the fiscal note. So again, in the fiscal note, it is cited that this bill could trigger state transportation trust fund expenditures of up to $6 million to cover CSX expenses. Again, that's part of the 2021 access agreement that allows MARC to run on CSX-owned lines. So with that, we'll urge a unfavorable report, and thank you.
Do you want to clarify that one more time?
Unfavorable report,
Okay.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair.
Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for giving us your unfavorable report. I just want to be clear what I'm hearing. You're saying because a two-man crew generally is required or is in a labor contract, that would force which company, CSX or anyone, to have a crew, okay?
But also, it's part of FRA rule that was passed in 2024. So it's not only in the labor contract, it's also an FRA rule.
Unless it changes.
Unless it changes. And in which case, if it does change, then the state will be required to reimburse CSX $6 million annually.
For having?
A different crew size mandate than the federal government.
Okay, so talk about other states. So the prior gentleman mentioned maybe some questions about interstate commerce. So if Maryland has two-person crew and, I don't know, Illinois has one, but Illinois is coming over to Maryland, at some point before they get to Maryland, they got to have another person jump on crew?
And that's precisely why the federal rule was passed, to make it consistent. So if that federal rule changes, then you're going to have a situation where in Maryland you have two people. In Pennsylvania you might have three. In Virginia you might have one. That is going to be a nightmare for what is a national network of rail.
But
right?
I would disagree, because what we're saying is we want at least two, right? So a two-person crew doesn't mean that you couldn't have 5 or 3, but I think what we're stressing is that it's at least 2.
Let me ask this. So with respect to air travel,
sure.
Okay, we have flights that originate in Maryland, fly over Maryland. We don't mandate crew size on a commercial airliner. And this should be the authority of the federal government, because this is a national network. It is not only singularly related to Maryland, but it is, again, FAA regulates airline traffic. This should be mandated, this should be regulated at the federal level.
And then last question, Madam Chair. So suppose the contract changes. Suppose now the union then has to fight because the contract does change and it says it's one, so then it's not. I guess the argument here seems to be that the contract generally is going to always protect and always have at least two-person crew, but the contract could also change. Isn't that so?
FRA rule could go away, the contract could change. Federal law could put in place, say, a one-man crew. But the current state and the state of that contract for, I think, close to 40 years has been a two-man crew.
And when is that contract, what is the duration of those contracts?
I don't know. I have some reason I believe around 2030, but Ms. Pendleton will know better than me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have a percentage or a number of miles of track in Maryland that would affect your company? Either one of you.
I mean, currently, no, I mean, do a percentage of, well, currently it's already being done on all the track in Maryland.
Right, so 100%.
So it'll be 100%.
Yeah.
It's already covered.
Okay.
Thank you. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so I have some questions here. First of all, I know that your testimony, one of your all's testimony, CSX, I think it was, or yeah, I think it was CSX, cites and I'm not a lawyer at all, cites an Illinois court decision in 2019. Are you aware that the Ninth Circuit Court in California had a different ruling that said that preemption defense was not valid?
I am aware that the Illinois decision.
Are you aware of the California Court of Appeals decision?
I am not.
Okay. Well, I could Google it. Sure. You could Google it. The second thing I want to ask is, are you aware that you keep referring to the FRA having the two-man crew requirement? Are you aware that major railroads, and I'm not sure you're in this, but at least two major railroads are suing to overturn that?
Yeah, I'm aware that people have been challenging that. Yes.
Yeah, so the railroad industry or members in the railroad industry are suing to overturn that requirement, correct?
That's what I said, yeah.
Okay, so if that were to be overturned because of the suit filed by the railroad industry, wouldn't that create the situation, the doomsday situation that you're outlining here?
No.
No, it wouldn't. Why not?
The labor contract requires a two-man crew.
Okay, thank you. So the labor contract requires the two-man crew.
Correct.
Are you a signature of that labor contract?
And what, does my firm represent?
Yeah,
the
I mean, are
Norfolk
you a
at the table?
signatory to the labor contract? Your company?
Oh, Norfolk Southern, sure.
Yeah, right. So Norfolk Southern at the collective bargaining table agreed to the two-man crew, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm really having a hard time figuring out if you agree to that at the collective bargaining table, why you would be opposed to it. I mean, as you said yourselves, it's already the practice. I really don't understand this vehement opposition to this when, especially with the caveats that are in this particular legislation, I really don't understand why you continue to sign collective bargaining agreements that allow for this. Maybe you can explain that to me.
It's not with the issue of a two-man crew, or we wouldn't have agreed to it. It's the opposition is to the idea of having to deal with a patchwork of laws that affect interstate commerce. So, and additionally, I mean, there are a lot of clauses in the labor contract that we don't put into law. But these are things that management and labor have agreed to. So it's more the idea of saying, look, we're already regulated federally. Dealing with one entity at the federal level is more efficient than dealing with 50 entities. And it's what Secretary Buttigieg said when he put the law in place. When he put the federal regulation in place was, hey, people have been asking for one rule on this. That's what I'm delivering so that we don't have a patchwork. It's consistent with what Secretary Buttigieg was. That's why. It's not in opposition to the idea of having two people on a crew, or we would handle that at the labor table. It's the idea of creating a patchwork of laws.
So one last question, if I may, Madam Chair. So if the FRA is overturned or not overturned, excuse me, if the FRA had a different requirement, say or the requirement went away like it was before the federal order. If it's overturned and it goes back to, no requirement under the FRA, wouldn't you still be governed by the collective bargaining agreement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Foley. I think we see one more question from Delegate Odom. And then we'll get to Delegate Spiegel, your bill and your 16 very patient witnesses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully this will be a quick question. But is the understanding correct that there's a concern held by CSX that if a law such as what is before us now were to pass, that a month later, a year later, another state will enter another law saying 3 people, not necessarily 3 people, but they would enter another law similar to this that may change and it may fluctuate. Is that the concern, John?
The concern, again, is we don't want a patchwork of different laws from state to state. That's why we believe that the federal government should have the ultimate authority to dictate how the national network of rail works and operates. So again, to your point, yes, we are concerned about having different laws in different states that we actually, again, this is one network, one rail network that we will then have to go through different laws and compliance measures to operate. It can be nightmarish.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Not seeing any more questions for this panel. We love a robust discussion. That one only got a tiny bit off the rails. I had to say that. But that will be the end of the hearing for Delegate Stein's bill, House Bill 862. And now we'll go on to House Bill 916, Delegate Spiegel, Transportation, Regional Transportation Authorities. And Delegate, welcome to the committee. You are the last bill hearing of the day, so we're here eager to hear you. And I'm going to turn oh, he gave me chocolate, so I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Vice Chair, just for the record, not all of those 16 witnesses are ones that I solicited, so. Members of the committee, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. And I also want to say good afternoon to the members of the Appropriations Committee who are joining us as well. I am Delegate Ryan Spiegel, for the record, here for House Bill 916, which is a reintroduction of a bill that you heard last year that would establish a new model to help select, fund, and construct regional transportation projects in light of the ongoing challenges and shortfalls of our state's Transportation Trust Fund. And we all know that the funding formula for the TTF, with its disproportionate reliance on gasoline tax revenue, is not sustainable in the long term. As more drivers choose electric and more fuel-efficient vehicles, as remote and hybrid work remains popular, revenue will continue to erode if we are continuing to rely on a gas tax. Now, actions taken by our General Assembly in the last couple of years have helped bolster the TTF in the short run, and that's a good thing. But we haven't addressed the bigger problem lurking around the corner. House Bill 916 creates 3 new regional transportation authorities, one for the Baltimore region, one for the Capital region, and one for Southern Maryland, to prioritize, fund, and construct much-needed regional transportation projects that have been on the books for years but have been unable to move forward due to lack of resources. And I would welcome the opportunity to add other regions to this bill if other areas of the state were interested. This regional authority model has been proven successful in Northern Virginia, which has been engaged in a flurry of transportation infrastructure investment and construction in recent years, as anyone who's been there recently knows. And HB 916 borrows several elements from that approach. It offers a robust funding mechanism, a system for these regional authorities to prioritize projects while remaining accountable to local jurisdictions, and a spending formula borrowed from Northern Virginia that allocates 70% of revenues to regional priorities and the other 30% to individual jurisdictions for local transportation needs within each authority's boundary. It also gives the authorities bonding capacity to leverage funding streams, as our state and other regional partners do, which is necessary for advancing important major projects. And it requires the authorities to collaborate with our regional planning organizations, so we are not reinventing the wheel. In the interest of time, since it's been said that this is the last hearing of a long afternoon, I won't delve into the details of these funding and governance structures here, but of course I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have if you're interested in revisiting those details, which we did discuss at last year's hearing. I just want to mention our co-sponsors are from Charles, Anne Arundel, Frederick, Howard, and Montgomery counties. We have a cross-file by Senator Alonzo Washington in the Senate. And notably, our bill requires authorities to invest a minimum of 30% of their regional spending on transit projects so that we can invest both in transit and in other modes of transportation. And it has language making clear that the funds generated for these authorities are meant to supplement, not supplant, existing funding from the state. The bill also has the formal support of the Transit Caucus, the Latino Caucus, and a number of local governments, as you'll hear today. If we want to make much needed long-term investments in transportation, if we want to unlock our potential for jobs and housing and access to services, increase quality of life in our state, and make more progress on our climate goals, then we need to be serious about a long-term, sustainable solution for transportation funding. And I think regional transportation authorities are a proven solution, so I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Chair and members of the committee, my name is Michael Sakata. I serve as the president and CEO of Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association, representing our contractors, our engineers, suppliers who build and maintain Maryland's transportation system. I also served as a former Transportation Revenue Infrastructure Needs Commissioner. I'm here today for the people of Maryland and for the members of MTMA who build and maintain the infrastructure that keeps this state moving. For decades, the TTF relied on the gas tax as its bedrock source of funding. For over a century, that model carried transportation investment. In 2026, this is the first year on record the gas tax is no longer the largest source of revenue in the TTF. Vehicles are more efficient. Electric vehicles are increasing. The traditional revenue base is shrinking. The states immediately, by the way, north and south of us, operate 7 regional transportation authorities combined. 3 in Virginia, 4 in Pennsylvania, each with dedicated regional revenue and governance. Maryland is becoming the outlier. HB 916 creates sustainable, regional-based, multimodal funding with, as we've heard, 70% supporting regional transportation funds, 30 local needs, and at least 30% supporting transit. These funds are supplemental and do not replace the existing state appropriations. Doing nothing is an option, but it is an option that the traveling public of Maryland can no longer live with. We urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Chris Lawson, and I recently joined the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association after 31 years with the Federal Highway Administration, where I worked closely with states on federal funding eligibility, project oversight, and competitive grant programs. I am here in support of HB 916. From a federal perspective, predictability and match capacity matter. Most major federal discretionary competitive programs require a non-federal share and reward applicants that demonstrate financial readiness and project delivery capability. HB 916 creates special, non-lapsing regional transportation funds supported by dedicated revenue. It also authorizes the authorities to issue bonds backed by that revenue. That structure strengthens a region's ability to demonstrate committed local match and long-term financial capacity. The bill also allows the authorities to apply for and negotiate federal grants in coordination with the department. From my FHWA experience, applications that show regional alignment, stable revenue, and clear prioritization score stronger in competitive processes. Federal partners look to disciplined planning, defined governance, and demonstrated funding stability. HB 916 provides those elements. In short, this framework strengthens Maryland's competitiveness for federal transportation investment and positions our region to secure a larger share of available funding. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jason Stanford. Members of the committee, my name is Jason Stanford. I'm the president of the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance, We are a partnership of businesses and citizens who live, work, and play throughout the DC region, including the great state of Maryland. We're here today to share our strong support for Delegate Spiegel's bill. We have a transportation authority in Northern Virginia, similar to the one that he's put forward here today. And I can tell you without a doubt, it has been a game changer for our region. It has been essential to getting hundreds of transportation projects that were, an idea moving forward in our region. It allows our region to leverage billions of dollars in additional local, state, and federal money to get these projects going. Projects like VRE and regional rail improvements, expanding our BRT network, bike and pedestrian upgrades, strategic roadway improvements, and new metro stations. Unlike the MPO plans that are fiscally constrained, the unconstrained plans allowed at RTAs make them visionary and forward-thinking, going beyond what otherwise is being considered. Projects are still evaluated, and the focus is placed on how many people are moved per dollar invested. Local decisions make speeding up the process and ensures that 100% of the transportation dollars that are raised in a region are actually invested in that region. RTAs have been a win for local and state DOTs and has not hampered any kind of coordination. And why is that? Because the return on investment, $1 in Northern Virginia invested in transportation returns $1.75 back to NOVA, but also $1.61 to the state. So even though the money is raised and spent regionally, it returns significant economic benefit to the entire state. Expanding the capacity of our transportation system supports economic growth and movement of more people and goods in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate. I know there's a lot of other witnesses. Is this your panel? Should we do some questions with you now, or if there are any?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a question. You talked about building projects, and obviously that's very important, but where you and I live, one of the biggest things the state funds is operating for WMATA. Where Delegate Lewis lives, one of the biggest things the state funds is the MTA's operations in Baltimore. So could this be used to cover those costs as well, or is it solely limited to building shiny new things?
As currently presented, Mr. Chair, it is not intended or designed to operate systems. It's intended to partner with those entities that already operate systems and help fund projects, capital projects for them. Of course, if it's the will of the committee to amend that, fine. I think there's probably lots of examples of other regional authorities around the country where they do operate systems, but that is not how the bill as written is currently designed. And I believe, and Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority also generally does not operate systems.
It doesn't operate the systems, but you'll notice there's a split between the 70% regional money and the 30% local money. In Northern Virginia, that 30% local money can be used for transit operations. And in fact, many of the localities in Northern Virginia use that money specifically to help fund their metro operation costs.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Delegate, I wasn't suggesting that the RTA replace WMATA. I could never have a different acronym
I couldn't imagine
all the time.
I couldn't imagine you suggesting that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, but just sending the money over to help pay the bill that Maryland's been shouldering all these years, I guess was the question. It sounds like it happens in Northern Virginia. We have a question from Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Spiegel, you've highlighted Southern Maryland in your consideration. I'll speak for St. Mary's and part of Calvert, and that is we have no regional transportation system down there. We don't really have much public transportation. I will say on behalf of Charles, not being a Charles County representative, they have a plan to bring the metro down to the Waldorf area. But I don't see how that will benefit a St. Mary's or partial Calvert County at all, besides implementing a new tax on already strained communities at this time.
Well, thank you for the question, Delegate. It's my understanding that there is on the books a Southern Maryland Transit Project, but that it has not been able to advance because there aren't resources for it. I am not an expert on that project, but representatives from Southern Maryland approached me when we were drafting this bill over the last couple of years and suggested that we could use this vehicle, this Regional Transportation Authority vehicle, to help fund and construct that Southern Maryland Transportation Project. But if not, and the will of the folks in Southern Maryland is to be taken out of this bill, I don't have any objection to that.
No, I think that you're correct in Charles County. I would not say that would be a true statement for St. Mary's and Calvert, which somehow gets lumped together in this. Just that's my 2 cents worth, but thank you.
I appreciate that, and we could certainly consider an amendment that takes, keeps some counties in and takes some counties out. I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Just to be clear though, Delegate, this is not a transit authority bill. This could go towards road projects, right?
Correct.
Jason would not be sitting there if it couldn't go towards road projects.
Correct.
Okay, so this could be very useful if you wanted to, say, rebuild the Thomas Johnson Bridge in St. Mary's and Calvert counties. So this is not just dedicated to transit. Is that accurate?
Yes, thank you for the assist. Yes, it is.
Vice Chair Guyton?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. I certainly think it's an interesting idea along the lines of what we just heard, though. As somebody who would be in Baltimore County, then put into a regional authority with Baltimore City, whom we love, also Anne Arundel County, whom we love, and Howard County, whom we love, those places have very different needs. And very different wants, right? And my area has very few transportation options. So I just kind of want to know not only how the funding is going to operate, and I see that it's spelled out fairly well in the bill, but how's the distribution of that funding going to work? Is there any real guideline on the fact that if we're contributing a significant amount of taxes to this regional authority, or are we then going to get new build out in the areas that don't have it, or is it going to go to the larger areas that already do?
Thank you for the great question, Delegate. This gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the governance structure of these regional boards, which is also spelled out, deep in the details of the bill. But in order to ensure accountability and to ensure that these regional authorities are really working in the best interest of the entire region and not just prioritizing one part of a region over another within a regional authority, the boards are structured to ensure that there is representation from elected officials across the region, both at the municipal and county level, as well as experts and representatives from the state. So that when they are making decisions as a board, there's input and ensuring that, when they're voting on how to prioritize projects, that input is there and that input is accountable to the county as well. Going back to the other point that Mr. Stanford made and that the chair made is that 30% of the revenue generated will go to the individual jurisdictions. So Anne Arundel County will get 30% of the revenue generated from the revenue plan of the regional authority that it is in to use for its own local transportation projects. So that is, a pretty significant additional amount of revenue that each individual jurisdiction within the footprint of the regional authority would benefit from and be able to decide how to spend on their own.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. I'll have some more questions offline.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and thank you, Delegate, for this bill. My question is, do you foresee this at some point, if this structure were to be enacted and we would have these authorities, would you see the gasoline tax going away or being reduced, or what would be the effect on the gasoline tax?
Yeah, obviously, thank you, Delegate, for the question. That's a bigger policy question, for the General Assembly. But at this point, we're trying to make sure that the creation of these authorities isn't used as an excuse to get rid of state investments in state projects or other MDOT funding that is already in place, and anticipated and expected as the normal course of business here. So I would be hesitant to say, that it should go away any time in the foreseeable future. But in the distant future, if we decide that we have enough revenue from these other sources to be able to invest in our transportation projects, I could see it, potentially changing. But again, that's a policy decision, I think, for the General Assembly. But I want to just, again, reemphasize, we're not trying to replace the TTF and what MDOT does right now. We're trying to supplement it with these regional authorities.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no other questions for this panel. And I just jumped in. I'm going to make sure we have, I might call some people that have already been called but are not here, but I don't want to miss anyone. Do we have Mr. Pete Kembis here with us? All right, do you guys want to shift and make some room at the table and shift to the microphone? I also have Mike Boinas, and you can correct your name for me if you'd like, if I got that wrong. And Kevin Thatcher, if you're with us, you may come to the table. Michael Higgins. All right, and you gentlemen may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My name is Pete Kimbus, and I serve on the Board of Directors for the Bethesda Chamber of Commerce. Here today to express our strong support for the vision and the framework of House Bill 916. Traffic congestion and aging infrastructure are among the biggest hurdles to economic growth and workforce retention in the capital region. We applaud Delegate Spiegel for taking bold action to address this through long-term regional transportation planning, and we're particularly supportive of 3 elements within the bill. First, the NVTA-style funding model. We highly appreciate that this bill mirrors the successful model in Northern Virginia by returning 30% of the generated revenues directly to our counties and municipalities, strictly for transportation. Second, intentional local representation. We strongly support ensuring that local voices are heard. Third, federal competitiveness. We support empowering the Capital Region Transportation Authority to aggressively pursue and negotiate federal infrastructure grants, which will bring vital federal dollars back into Maryland. We are always sensitive to additional taxes imposed on Montgomery County and the great state of Maryland and its residents. And as you continue to contemplate the sources of revenue for these authorities, we urge you to balance the needs of the program with the reality of the economy. We do appreciate, though, that the burden of supporting these authorities is not placed solely on the commercial sector. With a flexible approach to revenue generation, this bill could be a massive win for the Capital Region's economy, and we respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time and attention.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Mike Voinas. I'm a Senior Vice President leading the Capital Region for HNTB. We support House Bill 916 because it represents an important step towards strengthening how Maryland plans, funds, and delivers the projects our communities urgently need. Maryland is increasingly an outlier in our region when it comes to transportation governance and funding. Virginia operates 3 regional transportation funding authorities with independent revenue authority. Pennsylvania relies on multiple regional transit authorities, including SEPTA, to plan and fund multimodal service across multi-county regions. In contrast, Maryland remains largely centralized without comparable regional structures that match how people actually travel or how regional economies function. HB 916 begins to address that gap. Maryland will need new tools, new funding approaches, and more flexible governance structures to reduce congestion, improve system reliability, and remain economically competitive. HB 916 starts that long-range conversation by exploring a model that many states are already embracing: regional decision-making paired with reliable, locally guided funding. Our perspective comes from experience. As a firm delivering complex transportation programs across the country, we have seen how regional authorities, when well-structured, improve accountability, streamline project delivery, and align investment with the economic needs of the communities that they serve. We are also a local business employing Maryland workers. The ability to plan and finance major projects is not just a transportation issue, it's a jobs issue, an economic development issue, and a competitiveness issue. We urge the committee to support this legislation. It represents the type of long-range thinking that Maryland must continue developing. We appreciate the sponsors for bringing this conversation forward, and we stand ready to assist in shaping whatever comes next. Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Thatcher, and I work with Gray & Son Incorporated based in Baltimore, Maryland. Being based in Baltimore, all of our employees live and work in the Baltimore region. When we talk about transportation funding, we are talking about people, the people who sit in traffic trying to get home, the workers who depend on a steady job, the small businesses waiting on deliveries, the families who want safe, reliable roads and transit. HB 916 creates dedicated regional transportation funds, including the Baltimore Region Transportation Fund. Revenue from a modest regional sales surcharge, along with hotel and transfer surcharges, stays in the region. 70% supports the regional fund. 30% supports county and municipal transportation needs. From our perspective, predictability matters. When funding is stable and can support bonding, we plan for multi-year programs instead of one-year uncertainty. That means projects move on schedule instead of starting and stopping. Stable, predictable funding does more than move projects. It allows us to hire and retain more Marylanders. When we can see work coming over multiple years, we invest in people. We bring on apprentices. We promote from within. We expand our crews. HB 916 gives companies like ours the confidence to grow our workforce here at home and keep transportation dollars supporting Maryland families. We support HB 916.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mike Higgins, and I'm here to testify in support of HB 916. I represent Concrete General, it's a Gaithersburg-based heavy highway construction firm, builds state and local transportation projects throughout Maryland. In my previous employment, my company was a recipient of funding through the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, one of Virginia's regional transportation authorities. I saw firsthand how dedicated regional funding paired with clear scoring and accountability accelerated project delivery and strengthened long-term planning. Projects moved from concept to construction with greater certainty because the funding source was stable, reliable, and transparent. HB 916 brings that same structure to Maryland. It requires each authority to prepare a regional transportation plan and evaluate projects using objective, quantitative ratings focused on congestive reduction and regional mobility. It requires public reporting at least every 4 years with interim updates every 6 months. That transparency creates discipline and allows industry, local governments, and communities to plan ahead. The requirement that at least 30% of each regional fund support transit projects ensures balance across modes and reflects how people travel in our regions in Maryland. Predictable funding and transparent prioritization improves delivery, reduces delay, and provides better value to taxpayers. I appreciate your time today and a favorable report on HB 916. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Allen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is for Mike Voinis. Can you kind of tell us, I mean, I understand the spirit of the bill, and I'm definitely aligned with that. Can you kind of tell us in a more practical way what something like this or a regional authority would allow you to do that you can't under current law?
Sure. Well, what it does, it allows various regions to have the flexibility to be able to plan and fund their own projects. So as we know, I mean, the different regions have different characteristics and different needs, whether it's transit needs or highway needs, bridge needs, whatever it might be. And so creating these regional transportation authorities gives those boards that represent the authorities the ability to be able to be flexible, be able to plan for a long-term vision, and be able to utilize the money that's created through that, in that region, to be able to serve the residents in that region.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no more questions for this panel. I don't seem to be on. Seeing no more questions for this panel, we do have a virtual witness. Marissa Valeri, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Vice Chair, esteemed committee members. I'm Rockville City Council member Marissa Valeri. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. We are so grateful to Delegate Spiegel for sponsoring this important legislation. The Rockville Mayor and Council unanimously support HB 916. We support the revenue sharing arrangement in this bill, which would allocate 30% of revenues generated in a municipality to the municipality. The additional revenue would provide us with the opportunity to make additional investments in critical transportation infrastructure projects. Increased transportation funding would expedite the forward progress the city is making toward achieving its Vision Zero program goals. It also would allow us to have less reliance on federal grants for transportation projects, which right now are shaky at best and subject to the whims of federal administrations. HB 916 is an important step forward as it offers a creative solution to solving the state's transportation funding issues and would help municipalities like Rockville. By taking a regional approach, generating critically needed revenues, and encouraging multi-jurisdictional collaboration, this legislation has the potential to dramatically improve the quality of infrastructure here in Rockville and stimulate economic growth in Maryland. We urge the committee to provide HB 916 with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have two favorable with amendments. If you're with us, Mr. Schefter and Mr. Jorsch can approach. Grab a microphone and you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Schefter. I serve as Deputy Chief of Staff to Howard County Executive Calvin Ball. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. We want to commend Delegate Spiegel and all of the members of the sponsor panel for their vision on this bill. We certainly share the desire to see a greater amount of investment in the greater Baltimore region, in our transportation systems, particularly in our transit systems. Howard County leads in the operation of the Regional Transportation Agency of Central Maryland, which recently celebrated 1 million rides, which is a pretty big deal in our area. And despite some of our best efforts to connect into the greater Baltimore region, we have not achieved the kind of cooperation and connectivity for our passengers in Howard County and in Central Maryland into that greater Baltimore network. We see this regional transportation authority as an opportunity to enhance that collaboration and connectivity into that network. And we want to really just emphasize that we think it's important that we bring more of these decision-making authorities back to the regional level and back to the counties they serve. Our biggest concern with the bill, not necessarily the way that we're looking at this is we believe the best thing to do is to start with establishing the governance structure of this authority and allowing the authority itself to advise on the revenue package and coming back with a recommendation that is tailored to each region and its particular needs. So that is the essence of my testimony. We very much support the concept here, and we'd like to see these authorities have some ability to recommend back to the General Assembly how they raise revenue to support themselves.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bill Jorsch with the Maryland Municipal League here today supporting House Bill 916 with amendment. It's well documented the long struggle for local governments to retain transportation funding. Although recent legislation bumped up the proportion of local HUR, since highway user revenue cuts in 2009, municipal governments have racked up a $300 million budget gap. And municipalities are still feeling the effects of that funding gap today. Backlog or canceled projects dipping into general funds are still common. We recently conducted an evaluation of transportation spending by our members, and what we found is that HUR amounts going to municipal governments over the last couple of years have been between 50 and 60 million. But municipal governments are also spending almost that exact same amount out of their general fund on HUR eligible projects. Long story short, the current transportation funding model simply isn't working for our local governments. House Bill 916 obviously provides a creative solution that we've seen a version of this working in nearby states, as we heard earlier. And while I'm not going to go over the details of the bill as we've heard it from prior panelists, I will just obviously point out that the dedicated funding stream to local governments in these regional transportation authority regions is of particular interest to our members. I will say that our amendment is written out in our written testimony, but it essentially just provides a path for new regional transportation authorities to be created in a more formal manner. So with that, we ask for a favorable report with those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panelists. Mr. George, I'm just now getting a look at your testimony. You said the amendment you want to propose is in your written testimony. Could you just describe what that is?
Sure. Essentially, it would take 3 or more counties banding together and the municipalities within and proposing to the General Assembly that, hey, we'd like to be included in this. And it would take a vote of the local governments within a certain region of a certain number, and then making a formal proposal to this body or the General Assembly at large to be included in as a formal region as part of the structure of this bill.
And just to make sure I understand, 3 regions are defined in this bill. Those 3 regions don't include all 23 counties in Baltimore City. So you're saying for those that were not included, they would like to have the opportunity to join.
Exactly. It wouldn't dismantle the ones that are currently articulated in the bill. This would just be outside of those 3 articulated regions. It would provide a path for them to band together to participate in this new funding structure.
Great. Thank you for explaining.
Great question, Delegate Lewis. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you. I don't see any more questions for this panel. Thank you, gentlemen. We now have some unfavorable witnesses. If you are here with us still at the end of this day, thank you so much for your patience. Ms. Krista McGee with Maryland Realtors, Mark Fenrith, and Ann Rohr, Maryland Hotel Lodging Association, Volanda Lacan, Hampton Inn, Baltimore Downtown Convention Center, and Stuart Schwartz, Coalition for Smarter Growth. If you are all still present, looks like you are. And you may begin whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Krista McGee with Maryland Realtors, and today I'm testifying on behalf of 4 local associations, PG-CAR, SMAR, GBBR, and GCAR, in opposition to House Bill 916. Realtors recognize the importance of transportation investment. Infrastructure supports economic growth, access to jobs, and housing opportunity. However, Marylanders have been very clear about what is weighing on them most right now: housing affordability, cost of living, and taxes. Housing costs consistently rank among top concerns for voters statewide, while transportation is far lower on the list. House Bill 916 would impose a new transfer tax across 10 jurisdictions, increasing upfront costs of buying and selling property in some of Maryland's highest cost markets in a year when Marylanders have been told there would not be any additional tax increases. Transfer taxes show up immediately at the settlement table as closing costs. And in counties where median home prices are already above statewide average, adding another layer of transfer tax can be the difference between a buyer moving forward or having to delay or walk away, especially as households are already stretched by interest rates, insurance premiums, and rising property taxes. When Virginia adopted regional transportation funding mechanisms, those measures followed years of structured collaboration with local governments, business communities, and impacted industries to build consensus around both the revenue source and the projects being funded. House Bill 916 does not reflect that same collaborative, stakeholder-driven foundation. Maryland should be focused on lowering barriers to homeownership and improving affordability, not increasing transaction taxes during an already challenging housing market. For these reasons, we respectfully request an unfavorable report on House Bill 916. Thank you.
If it's all right, Madam Chair, I'll go next, if that's agreeable. My name is Mark Feinroth. Good afternoon, committee members, Environment and Transportation Appropriations Committee members. I am Mark Feinroth with the law firm of Boston and Ploud, attorneys at law, representing the Maryland Hotel and Lodging Association, with whom I'm accompanied by these 2 delightful witnesses to my left. In any case, let me just explain, we're not really opposed to the structure suggested by Delegate Spiegel and his bill. It's a respectful opposition to the bill based on the funding mechanism. The hotel industry is already a very heavily taxed industry. We pay our customers, our visitors to this state, pay a 6% state sales tax, hotel tax, an additional tax at the local level that varies from county to county and can be as high as 11% in Baltimore City, 8% I believe in Montgomery County. I can kind of go through the other counties if you're interested in all the details of that. But it's a very heavily taxed and very productive industry in terms of the state's GDP and producing jobs and wealth and income to the state, and taxes paid to the state already from our visitors coming to the state. It's a very competitive industry. Folks who come and visit here in the state of Maryland are very price sensitive. They easily can find their way to hotel rooms in Delaware, Virginia, the District of Columbia, Pennsylvania, where they find a better, cheaper hotel room. And we've all been there. We all shop around for our vacations with our families and our loved ones. So in respectful opposition, we're opposed to the funding mechanism that would produce the funds to move us to the next level on transportation planning in our state. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Amy Rohrer, here on behalf of the Maryland Hotel Lodging Association. As Mr. Feinroth indicated, we are opposed to the 1% hotel surcharge, a new tax on our industry. Not opposed to the bill in its entirety, but very concerned by that being the funding mechanism. We are a demand-sensitive industry in a very soft recovery. Room night demand is still below 2019 levels. And in 2025, RevPAR, which is revenue per available room, declined 1.9% year over year. And in the jurisdictions that are targeted in this bill, that decline was even greater at negative 2.3%. That statewide RevPAR decline translates to $85.6 million in lost hotel revenue, $5.1 million in unrealized state sales tax, and more than $200 million in lost guest spending in 2025. More than 2/3 of Maryland's hotel rooms are located in the impacted jurisdictions. Increasing their tax burden now makes them less competitive at precisely the wrong time. It's also important to note that the state's tourism marketing funding was cut by $3.1 million in fiscal year 26. So the state is simultaneously decreasing demand generation and increasing the cost of travel. We support transportation investment, but funding it by taxing a demand-sensitive industry during a fragile recovery is counterproductive. The fastest way to increase tax revenue is to restore room night volume and expand the base, not raise the rate. I've submitted written testimony with more detail and am also joined by one of our members, and we respectfully urge you to reject HB 916 as drafted or remove the proposed 1% hotel surcharge. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Yolande Lacan. I'm the general manager at the Hampton Inn Camden Yards at the Convention Center. I represent my hotel. I represent the hotels in the CBD district for Baltimore City, as well as a member of the board for the Maryland Hotel Lodging Association. They've given you some great data. I'd like to give you one more piece of the pie. The total tax burden on our guests who arrive into Baltimore City is currently 17.5%. We are one of the 2 largest convention areas in the state. The second one being, of course, National Harbor. Their tax burden is already at 18%. If we add another piece onto that, another percentage point, we would be at 18.5% and 19%. That is some of the highest overall hotel taxes in the country. The Convention Center can give you data on who we compete against for association business. Primarily, believe it or not, Columbus, Ohio. Don't ask. Columbus, Ohio has an overall tax of 8% for their hotel sales. When you talk about a lower cost of a room and an 8% tax, where is it more affordable to bring your conventions? Visit Baltimore and the Convention Center have done excellent work in trying to continue to keep the Convention Center busy. They've had to pivot to do that, and that pivot has meant more day use and less overnight business. In 2018-2019, there were over 100 nights during the year of each year, about 2 nights per week, with
occupancies of more than 80%. In the last 2 years, that number has hovered between 40 and 50 nights per year, or less than 1 per week, where the occupancy for the hotels in the Central Business District in Baltimore has been above 80%. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Am I next? All right. Thank you. Stuart Schwartz, I'm the Executive Director of Coalition for Smarter Growth. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee for this opportunity. Unfavorable is not quite right for us, actually. It's let's further discussion. You heard about how much discussion there occurred in Virginia. My group has worked for 29 years in Montgomery, Prince George's, D.C., Northern Virginia. We're very familiar with the 3 authorities in Virginia. The other 2 are in Richmond and Hampton Roads. I think our first concern and thing you need to think about is that once these tax streams are assigned to these regional authorities and to the local officials making those decisions and they're bonded, I don't think they're that accessible to you ever again for other needs, whether education, healthcare, or other major transportation investments that the state might want to make. Second, I think Delegate Corman asked the question about operation funding. By the way, I want to thank Delegate Spiegel for the bill, because I think we do need to solve the transportation funding, but we also definitely want to connect it to land use and some other issues. But let me first, before I go to that, I want to say on the operations side, there is no money for operations or maintenance. They're creating a lot of the higher maintenance costs in Virginia that are then saddled by the state as a whole to pay for those. And right now, the state, we're desperately, desperately seeking operating funding for buses in Virginia, and there is no money available, and we can't tap these other sources. They're not being covered. Everybody's strained local to the state level, there is no doubt. I think the most important thing for us is that we have to connect this to better land use. I was hoping that would happen with these authorities. It has happened in a couple of jurisdictions, but in the vast majority, no. In other words, you can have poorly planned land use, completely auto-dependent, traffic and sprawl, huge infrastructure needs. Oh, okay, we'll just use some of our regional funds to build that new road to dig our way out of it. So I think that creates a long-term problem. So I think we need to link land use and transportation. There are benefits to the Unified Trust Fund. We have to focus on fix-it-first infrastructure, ensure operations and maintenance are covered, and you've got a couple of great bills this year in prioritization and transit-oriented development. So that's where we stand. For now, I think we're here to work with Delegate Spiegel and others on solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've heard this is mainly for everybody on the panel. Well, let me ask my first question, and then that'll be my second question. My first question is mainly for the tourism industry and the realtors. I mean, we've heard that this is in place in Northern Virginia, and these taxes, are in place there. And, we always hear about how it's so much better in Virginia. So they seem to be, that's a joke. So they seem to be doing okay with this. I mean, how do you explain that?
Thank you. Currently, Alexandria, Virginia's total tax base for hotel guests is at 9.5%. Arlington, Virginia is at 8.25%, and Richmond, Virginia is at 8%. All of those about half of what we're talking about here in Baltimore City.
So, and I would just add, Delegate Foley, that, I think what we heard in testimony from the proponents was that it's the Regional Transportation Authority model that is in existence in Virginia. And I don't know that we really did hear that they fund it in exactly the same way as proposed in House Bill 916. So I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I just don't know that I'm not aware that they fund it in exactly the same way.
Okay, fair enough. And that brings me to my second question, which is directed to everybody on this panel. I think what I'm hearing you say is, I think you said it directly. We don't have a problem with this concept or with the regional transportation authorities. We have a problem with the funding mechanisms. Granted that the funding has to come from somewhere, but I would just ask you, if you were able to work out the funding mechanism, would you then support this legislation?
So I'll take a whack at that, Delegate Foley. I mean, I haven't discussed this with our clients.
Sure.
But if you were to take that 1% out of what we're already paying, what our customers are already paying to the state and to the local governments, I'm not sure we would see that as a terrible thing. And I don't think we would see it as objectionable as the 1% surcharge. We're already paying, as you heard, 17.5%, 18% in some places. I think 7% on top of the 6% sales tax in Montgomery County.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a pretty heavy burden.
Okay.
Take what you're already taking and assign it to transportation. And honestly, it ought to be paid by some of the tourists who are traveling to our state. They're using the roads, why not? But on top of what we're already paying, that's really.
Okay, so that's your issue.
That's the burden.
Yeah.
I'm somewhat separate. The Coalition for Smart Growth, a small nonprofit, we don't have a financial stake either way on this, but I do think it is really important to think about your governance structure. To some extent, having the money separate from the local decision makers might be helpful. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on, even with the metric system that they have. There's a lot of horse trading and refusing to question someone else's project. So, and again, you're building a lot of capital projects, but you're not setting aside maintenance. They're not even letting us take some of that money for Metro's capital rehabilitation needs. We've had to beg every year for that money, and the state has to then find money elsewhere.
You're talking about in Virginia.
In Virginia, to make that. That's where the experience that I have is. And again, so no long-term maintenance funding, and every lane mile of highway you build or transit rail is going to build a maintenance debt in the future. And again, you're bonding this, so we're borrowing again for more construction. I think if we don't get the mechanism straight to link it to better land use, to ensure we're doing maintenance, I mean, our country has been trying to build its way out of problems for years. I'd rather see far more support for housing in Baltimore City and in existing towns and cities and older suburbs, like some of these housing bills are trying to do. They have to be worked out, that are transit accessible, walkable, to reduce the amount of driving demand on our roadways.
Thank you so much for your answer. I think before we go too far off on another tangent.
Yeah, I just want to make just a concluding statement, if I could, in response to their questions, Madam Chair, which is that, so this is a perfect opportunity for you all to help shape this legislation so that we do get something in place to move these goals forward. And I would just encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions for this panel, that ends the hearing on House Bill 916. It ends our hearings for today, although we do have some subcommittee chair announcements. So who would like to go first? Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Non-Energy Utilities Subcommittee will meet in 10 minutes. Let's say five of on Zoom.
8
Thank
minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Transportation Subcommittee will meet 5 minutes after non-utilities ends. I'll be monitoring them to see when they end, so just watch your emails and text messages for update.
All right. If that's it, then we are adjourned till subcommittee.